Chapter 9:24. After the date of the battle was decided, the encompassing emperor and the earth exalt left the world beyond worlds. The brocade emperor did not seem to have returned to Kunlun Mountain's ingenious flying peak either. Lu Xiangtong continued, but recently, the Earth Sovereign seems to have returned to bear witness to this battle. Hearing Lu Xiangtong's words, Yan Zhaoge's previously suspended heart was instantly put at ease. Outside the world beyond worlds, some major events were likely to occur in the infinite extra-dimensional space. As a result, it attracted the attention of many peak experts of the world beyond worlds. Yan Zhaoge, who already knew of the existence of the immortal court, and Buddhism deduced that it was most likely related to them. Mars Halbert probably knew about the existence of the immortal court and the Buddhist sect. After all, he had followed the exalted fire luminary in stabilizing the world beyond worlds in the past. He could also be said to be of the orthodox three clear lineage and had ties with the world beyond worlds. Perhaps it was precisely because of this that he had agreed to postpone his battle with the brocade emperor. After deciding on the date of the battle, the brocade emperor, the encompassing emperor, and the others hurried to extra-dimensional space. The situation there seemed to be rather tense, such that the brocade emperor had even postponed his battle with Mars Halbert to deal with matters there first. It was very likely that the concealed sovereign and the female emperor had stayed behind to maintain the stability of the world beyond worlds. Under such circumstances, as one of the five emperors, since the female empress had decided to stay behind, then the heaven emperor would most likely not stay behind, and would also head for the outer realm void. However, he still couldn't let his guard down. With the brocade emperor being free today, he could return to complete his battle with Mars Halbert. Who knew if the heaven emperor would return to the world beyond worlds as well? Moreover, the outcome of the battle between the brocade emperor and Mars Halbert was still unknown. Yan Zhaoge exchanged glances with Fu Ting, nodding slightly. Both of them could understand the importance of this matter. However, their actions fell into Lu Xiangtong's eyes, causing his expression to involuntarily become even stranger. Fu Ting cupped her hands towards Lu Xiangtong. I only found out about this matter today. Since I know about it, of course I can't miss it. I wonder if Chief Lu can point me in the right direction? Lu Xiangtong hurriedly collected his thoughts and said seriously, of course. Saying thus, he led the way as Yan Zhaoge and Fu Ting both followed suit. In the world beyond worlds, battles between emperor-level experts were extremely rare. Even if there were conflicts between the five emperors and they fought with each other, it was rare for them to fall out with each other. Even if they did, the three sovereigns might intervene. For today's battle, firstly, the three sovereigns seemed to have their own matters to attend to, and secondly, Mars Halbert's situation was special, which was why he was able to participate. Yan Zhaoge was also very interested in this. However, even he could not get close to the battle between the two great emperors. There were so many people there today. Although they said that they were spectators, they were actually unable to get close. It could only be said that they all wanted to witness this rare grand event. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause one to be swept away by the shock waves, and there would be no one to blame, even if one died. Although we don't dare to get close, just being able to sense the changes in the clash of energies from afar is also extremely beneficial to us. Lu Xiangtong sighed in admiration. I can only hope that the brocade emperor and Mars Halbert do not clear the area in advance. In a duel between experts, some didn't mind others watching from the sidelines, while others might clear the place. It all depended on the wishes of both parties. Fu Ting didn't say anything more. She just followed behind Lu Xiangtong, silently. After walking for who knew how long, Yan Zhaoge's heart jolted. Gazing over, He saw a clump of light in the distance, lying amidst the darkness of space. The ball of light wasn't bright. It looked yellowish and gray. It was oval and shaped like a chicken egg. A heavy, heavy intent emanated from within, causing the trio to feel as though they were facing the vast, boundless earth of the world beyond worlds that bore all things. Yan Zhaoga's eyes lit up slightly. Oh, condensing one's true essence, virtually creating an actual world. Fu Ting and Lu Xiangtong both nodded. It's the work of an Earth Supreme. Of the world beyond worlds, 10 exalts, the southeastern exalt Chao Jia, the northeastern exalt Lu Zhenggu, and the southern exalt Zhuang Shen had all presided over a region, being lords of a territory. The east, west, north, south, east, south, southwest, northeast, and northwest supremes were all the same. Meanwhile, the other 2 exalts resided in the central June Heaven territory. The central June Heaven territory was where the Kunlun mountain was located. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors had each established their own abodes and Dao right grounds there. Although the peak of the martial saint realm was strong, he was still a revered figure in the human world. In the central June Heaven territory, he naturally could not act like the other 8 territories, where his words carried enormous weight, and he reigned supreme. Still, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were often not in the world beyond worlds or cultivating for long periods of time. Therefore, these immortal realm experts seldom interfered with the daily affairs of the central June Heaven territory. The other exalts' whereabouts were also uncertain. Therefore, the affairs of the central June Heaven territory, big or small, were actually all handled by the Earth Exalt. The Earth Exalt was a personal disciple of the earthly sovereign, as his current title was related to the earthly sovereign. It was also rare for exalts to directly clash with one another. Still, it had long since been rumored in the world beyond worlds that the upper and lower were superior to the 8 directions. Sects and experts who could establish themselves in the central June Heaven territory were all not simple figures. Still, it was not just them who had to submit to the Earth Exalt's rule. Even martial practitioners of the lineage of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors like Fu Ting of Kunlun Mountain had to give face to the Earth Exalt as well. To a certain extent, the Earth Exalt was like Chao Jia and Lu Zhenggu in that he was the lord of a territory, the lord of the central June Heaven territory. Besides the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors and the other exalt, he could control everyone else. I've gone to see the Earth Exalt. Will the 2 of you be coming along? The Earth Exalt was a senior as well as the referee of this battle. While it was necessary for Fu Ting to go over and greet him, she would not be staying behind. The Brocade Emperor had arranged a battle with someone else. His ingenious flying peak would definitely be coming. After meeting the Earth Exalt, Fu Ting could just meet up with her fellow disciples. Lu Xiangtong had always been backed by ingenious flying peak in the central June Heaven territory. Still, if he could form a good relationship with the Earth Exalt and become familiar with him, he would naturally be happy to do so. Therefore, he was prepared to accompany Fu Ting. Yan Zhaoga, however, did not intend to go over. The central June Heaven territory and the eastern vast Heaven territory were similarly searching for Xue Chuqing. Without knowing the relationship between the 2, it might be very difficult to link them together. Still, there was no harm in being careful. Actually, Yan Zhaoga had wondered before whether Fu Ting and the descendants of ingenious flying peak had already seen through something like Lu Zhenggu and Chao Jia had. Perhaps they had not. After all, ingenious flying peak had not participated in the search for Xue Chuqing. Yet, what about the Brocade Emperor? He had previously invited him and Yan Di to the minor no-hatred Dao arena as guests. Had he considered this in this regard? While he had some guesses, Yan Zhaoga's expression was calm as ever, no fluctuations in it in the least. Fu Ting did not force him. My fellow disciples of ingenious Flying Peak should already be in the vicinity. If young Master Yen is willing, you can first meet up with them." Yen Zhaoge smiled. "I will have to trouble you again." After watching the two of them head towards that clump of light, Yen Zhaoge turned and walked elsewhere. When the experts of ingenious Flying Peak arrived, they would also set up a formation amidst space like the Earth Exalt. Fu Ting had given him a jade talisman that resembled a red lotus, whilst also a flame, which could help him guide the way at close range. After traveling for a while longer, Yen Zhaoge's eyes lit up once more. In the distance, he indeed saw an extremely massive crimson lotus blooming soundlessly amidst the darkness of space. Streams of plain-colored cloud chi wreathed the surroundings of the red lotus. Chapter 9:25. Gazing over from afar, that red lotus occupied close to half of the region of distant space, as one could imagine just how massive it was. Yen Zhaoge had heard Fu Ting mention that this was actually ingenious Flying Peak's riding wind heavenly vessel. The Brocade Emperor had refined numerous undefeatable red lotuses into a riding wind heavenly vessel, thus resulting in its current form. It was worth mentioning that Fu Ting's unique treasure, the Red Lotus Tribulation, originated from that undefeatable red lotus. The Red Lotus heavenly vessel could also be considered one of ingenious Flying Peak's signature vessels. Currently, the heavenly vessel was no longer moving as it hovered amid space, the essence chi of fire emanating outwards as it reconstructed the form of a red lotus with the divine vessel concealed within. Streams of plain-colored cloud chi wreathed its surroundings, signifying that there were experts of ingenious Flying Peak who were proficient in the grand plainness immeasurable body present on the vessel. Yen Zhaoge kept that jade talisman, which resembled fire whilst also a red lotus, heading towards that massive red lotus in the distance. Currently, the appointed date of the battle between the two emperors was already drawing near. Many world beyond worlds martial practitioners who had come to watch the show were gathered in the vicinity. From the looks of it, the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd had no intention of chasing them away. Yen Zhaoge observed as he walked. Without making a move, he would not be able to recognize the origins of most people. Now, however, Yen Zhaoge felt that someone was staring at him. Following his gaze, he saw a yellow-clothed girl who was currently appraising him with her big round eyes. Seeing Yen Zhaoge look over, the girl felt rather awkward. Still, she did not shift her gaze away as she continued to meet his gaze. Beside that yellow-clothed girl stood a few people who seemed to be seniors of her lineage. These people were all brimming with vitality as powerful auras emanated from their bodies, looking like they were no ordinary people. This was especially so for the middle-aged man, who seemed ordinary yet was hard to ignore. At first glance, Yen Zhaoge was virtually certain that he was stronger than the chief of the Jade Mountain sect, Lu Xiangtong, whom he had just met. Also, he was not just a little bit stronger. That middle-aged man smiled apologetically at Yen Zhaoge before frowning and glancing at the yellow-clothed girl beside him. "Don't be rude, Yuluo." The yellow-clothed girl shrunk back, yet did not retract her gaze as she muttered, "It should be that one of Broad Creed Mountain." The middle-aged man scolded softly, "But you can't stare at him so rudely." "Oh." The yellow-clothed girl pursed her lips and then said, "Eldest Marshal Uncle, I want to ask him about Sister Foam." The middle-aged man said helplessly, "How can I be so presumptuous to ask other people's business?" Yen Zhaoge's heart jolted as he walked forward, smiling. "Is there something you need? Forgive this Yan's poor eyesight, but we have never met before." "Is it Broad Creed Mountains, solar luminary young master, Yen Zhaoge of the southeastern Young Heaven Territories, Royal Reed Sea?" That middle-aged man straightened his expression, cupping his hands towards Yen Zhaoge. "We are of the northern profound Heaven Territories Cloud Pavilion Mountains, profound remnant locale." Yen Zhaoga blinked. Northern Profound Heaven Territory, Cloud Pavilion Mountain, Profound Remnant Monastery. Yen Zhaoga was not unfamiliar with this name. They were of the Northern Exalt's lineage. I am indeed Yen Zhaoga. Everyone, please. Yen Zhaoga cupped his hands in return before his gaze fell on that yellow-clothed girl. I wonder if there is anything I can help you with. That middle-aged man smiled bitterly, first introducing himself. I am surnamed Zhang Mo. These are my fellow disciples. He looked at that yellow-clothed girl as well. This is my junior apprentice niece, Guan Yulua. Yen Zhaoga had long since noticed that the profound remnant locale martial practitioners present were all not weak. For example, their leader, Zhang Mo, was shockingly an expert of the mid-immortal bridge stage. Yen Zhaoga had never seen him before. Still, as soon as he said his name, Yen Zhaoga recalled that he had once heard Mu Jun, Chen Zhiliang, and the others of Golden Court Mountain mention his name. Northern Heavenly Chi, Zhang Mo Profound Remnant Locale's lineage, the head disciple of the Northern Exalt. He was one of the few powerful figures of the entire Northern Profound Heaven Territory, a peak expert of the world beyond world's senior generation, alongside the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Lin Hanhua. While he appeared ordinary on the surface, he was actually a hegemon of a region. While they were both mid-immortal bridge martial saints, Lu Xiangtong would virtually have no chance of victory against him at all. Zhang Mo aside, the profound remnant locale martial practitioners here were all extraordinary, as well, the weakest being seeing divinity martial saints. There was only that yellow-clothed girl who was not even a martial saint, as she was still only a martial grandmaster. Such a martial grandmaster was incomparably conspicuous amongst a group of seeing divinity martial saints. While anyone could come and spectate this peak clash between emperors, as long as they could ensure their own safety, there was still a minimum requirement. But no matter what, there was still a minimum requirement. Martial artists with too low a cultivation base would not be able to clearly see the movements of these two powerhouses, let alone understand the mysteries of their fight. Zhang Mo and the others controlled their distance, not getting too close to the battlefield. It would definitely not be a problem for them to take care of Guan Yulua. Still, it would be completely meaningless for Guan Yulua to spectate this battle, as she would not gain anything from it. Still, if she is surnamed Guan. Seeing Zhang Mo's rather doting attitude towards Guan Yulua despite being strict, Yen Zhaoga gradually came to an understanding. The Northern Exalt was surnamed Guan. Now that Yen Zhaoga was before her, Guan Yulua's expression turned solemn as she greeted him politely. Greetings, young Master Yen. Please forgive me for my lack of manners just now. It's fine, Yen Zhaoga smiled. Is something the matter? Guan Yulua said, It's like this, young Master Yen. Do you have any news of Sister Feng, Yunsheng? Yen Zhaoga asked curiously, You know Yunsheng? Hearing how Yen Zhaoga had addressed Feng, Yunsheng, the hearts of Zhang Mo and the others all jolted slightly. A few days ago, I was traveling alone and encountered some trouble. Thanks to Sister Feng, I was able to escape. Guan Yulua said, But then I was separated from Sister Feng. I went to your sect to look for her, but Sister Feng did not return. I wonder if young Master Yen has seen her recently? Yen Zhaoga looked rather playfully at Guan Yulua. After entering secluded cultivation for a period of time, Feng Yunsheng successfully broke through the final bottleneck, transcending mortality and entering sainthood, becoming the third person of her generation to step into the martial saint realm after Yen Zhaoga and Su Fei. The Northern Ocean clone was still on the mountain. Therefore, Yen Zhaoga was already aware of the situation. After transcending mortality and entering sainthood, Feng Yunsheng still had to bid farewell to her sect and embark on the path she wanted to take. However, judging from the time, She should have left the mountain not long ago. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing as soon as he went out for a walk. In order to protect herself and her sect, Feng Yinsheng would not easily reveal her identity when she was outside. Yan Zhaoge believed that Feng Yinsheng would be able to grasp how to deal with it and what to say to whom. At the end of the day, Feng Yinsheng was not a fledgling who had just started out, as she was extremely experienced in traveling. Yet, this yellow-clothed girl knew Feng Yinsheng's name and background. This meant that she had left a very good impression on Feng Yinsheng. This Yen was not in the world beyond worlds before this. Having just returned from extra-dimensional space, I have yet to see Yinsheng. Yan Zhaoge answered truthfully. Where did you meet earlier? Chapter 9:26. Hearing that Yan Zhaoge also didn't know where Feng Yinsheng was, Guan Yulua was instantly greatly disappointed. We met in a foreign dimension outside of the world beyond worlds. Sadly, we were separated afterwards. She looked rather worried. Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly. The next time I see her, I will tell her that there is a little girl who has always been thinking about her. Guan Yulua said happily, Thank you, young Master Yan. If you have time, please come to Yunj Mountain with Sister Feng. Zheng Mo's expression didn't change when he heard this, and he had no intention of objecting. Our clan has long heard of the great name of the Northern Exalt. It is our honor to be able to make a trip to Cloud Pavilion Mountain. Yan Zhaoge smiled, nodding. According to Xiao AI, his mother, Xue Chuqing, had once traveled through the Northern Profound Heaven territory for quite some time. He had met and taken in Xiao AI somewhere in the Northern Profound Heaven realm. The Northern Profound Heaven territory had never responded to the search for Xue Chuqing. Although it couldn't be said that they were taking good care of him, at least they turned a blind eye. However, it was said that the relationship between the Northern Profound Heaven territory and the Northeastern Sky Heaven territory was not very harmonious. Border disputes, competition for resources, and talent between neighboring realms were often not on good terms. This was to be expected. However, the two great exalts of the North and Northeast seemed to be standing on the same side when it came to Xue Chuqing. After Yan Zhaoge exchanged greetings with Zheng Mo and the others, they all headed towards the distant Red Lotus heavenly vessel together. The Northern Exalt's lineage of Cloud Pavilion Mountain's profound remnant locale did not have any special relationship with the Brocade Emperor's lineage of ingenious Flying Peak's Red Lotus Cliff. However, since they had come to spectate this grand event, etiquette dictated that they pay a visit to the people from ingenious Flying Peak. On the way, Zheng Mo and the others were actually also observing Yan Zhaoge. While Yan Zhaoge did not intentionally reveal his cultivation base, he also did not conceal it. With the cultivation bases of Zheng Mo and the others, they could all tell that Yan Zhaoge was currently extraordinary. Therefore, everyone experienced what happened to Yaoshan Sect's sect master, Lu Xiangtong. It wasn't surprise, but fear. Guan Yulua was unable to see through Yan Zhaoge's cultivation base. Still, after hearing Zheng Mo and the others' secret sound transmissions, she instantly stared wide-eyed. A profound remnant monastery martial artist next to him hesitated for a moment before finally asking, Eldest senior brother, could his age be? Throughout history, there had been cases of martial artists using special methods to conceal their true age and mislead others in order to gain fame. Although it was rare, it was not impossible. Even if he faked it, at least I can't tell how he did it, Zheng Mo said calmly. The Xianlu monastery martial artist nodded silently. Even if it was fake, being able to fool Zheng Mo's eyes was also a kind of ability. No one dared to look down on him. If it wasn't fake, then it would be even more impressive, Zheng Mo said. Instead, this young Master Yan's relationship with ingenious Flying Peak is so deep that it somewhat surpasses our expectations. While it is rumored that the Southeastern Exalt admires him greatly, The Southeastern Exalt is the Southeastern Exalt at the end of the day, and the Brocade Emperor is the Brocade Emperor. His fellow disciple muttered, "If it's really as he said, and the token was given to him by that Red Lotus Fu, then could it be?" Zhang Emo shook his head. "It's hard to say." Another person asked via sound transmission, "Eldest apprentice brother, do you think that the immortal artifact left behind by the dim Radiant Emperor in the past really ended up in the hands of this young man?" Zhang Emo said, "It is rumored that a 9th-level martial saint expert of the southeastern Yangheaven territory, the star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide, perished at Broad Creed Mountain. I think that the rumor of the immortal artifact should be true." The other party pulled back the corners of his mouth, his expression rather unnatural. Speaking of this, while Guan Lide was unrelated to the Northern Exalt, they shared the same surname. Many people in the world beyond worlds were still guessing whether the two were related. That person muttered to himself that immortal artifact should have been left at Broad Creed Mountain. It shouldn't have been brought around by this Yin Zhaoga as he roams the world, right? Zhang Emo glanced at him. "What do you want to do?" The other party was silent for a moment before he said, "Master has strict orders that all Xianlu monastery disciples are not to ask about the dim Radiant Emperor's legacy." "Of course I remember that. Still, eldest apprentice brother, that is an immortal artifact at the end of the day." Zhang Emo was not enraged, as he just asked calmly, "How many times has Master issued such strict orders for us not to touch a certain treasure?" Hearing his words, a thoughtful look appeared on that profound remnant locale disciple's face. The answer was not that many times, very few indeed. Still, it was precisely because of this that the severity of the problem was all the more apparent. The profound remnant locale martial practitioners spoke no more as they silently followed Zhang Emo, traveling alongside them. Yin Zhaoga soon arrived in the vicinity of the Red Lotus. Only in close proximity could they feel the massive size of that Red Lotus. It was crimson, boundless and boundless as it resembled a sea of flames. The Red Lotus bloomed, each massive petal seemingly filling space itself. Some people had already gathered on the flower petals in 2s and 3s. Yin Zhaoga knew that these were all martial practitioners who were on friendly terms with ingenious Flying Peak while possessing rather sufficient statuses. At the center of the Red Lotus, 2 streams of qi coiled, one black and one white, resembling the pistils of a flower. The black and white streams of qi coiled, forming a Taiji diagram. At the center of the Taiji diagram was a massive divine vessel. From the outside, it seemed to be around half the size of an ordinary riding, winged, heavenly vessel. Walking towards that Red Lotus heavenly vessel, Yin Zhaoga encountered someone familiar along the way, Mu Jun of Golden Court Mountain of the Southeastern Exalt's lineage. After greeting Mu Jun, Zhang Emo and the others took their leave of Yin Zhaoga, heading towards the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. Yin Zhaoga stopped where he was, chatting with Mu Jun. Great chaos seems to have arisen in extra-dimensional space. Therefore, the Brocade Emperor and the Heaven Emperor both headed there earlier. Mu Jun said, "There is no need to worry." Mu Jun said, "The Heaven Emperor has yet to return. There is no need to worry. If not for his arranged battle with Mars Halberd, the Brocade Emperor would not have the time to return either." Yin Zhaoga looked around. "The Exalts have not come for such a grand occasion." Mu Jun said, "Besides the Upper Exalt, whose whereabouts are uncertain, Master and the other Exalts generally have to remain in the world beyond worlds. The Earth Exalt is here to mediate things, thus coming over." Yin Zhaoga asked curiously, "With the relationship between the Southeastern Exalt and the Brocade Emperor, why is Senior Apprentice Brother Mu here at the Red Lotus and not on the vessel? Speaking of which, while the Brocade Emperor is on very good terms with my master, the one currently presiding over the Red Lotus heavenly vessel is the Brocade Emperor's junior apprentice sister, the Grand Planus Origin, Lady Tao Yu. Mu Jun did not stand on ceremony with Yen Zhaoge as he said directly, "She is not on good terms with my master and also has a high seniority. I will not go up and invite trouble for myself." The flames of gossip within Yen Zhaoge's heart were instantly ignited. "Oh!" Seeing his expression, Mu Jun instantly curled his lips. "It is purely a conflict between my master and her. To be honest, it is rumored that she and the Brocade Emperor seem to have. Still, I cannot be too certain." Mu Jun glanced at Yen Zhaoge. "I would personally advise you not to go up as well. You are rather close to junior apprentice sister Fu Ting, and the relationship between the Grand Plainness Origin Lady and junior apprentice sister Fu is also rumored to be bad." Chapter 9:27. Yen Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. "The Grand Plainness Origin Lady is still a senior at the end of the day. She shouldn't go to the extent of making things difficult for us, right?" When he had previously interacted with ingenious Flying Peaks martial practitioners, the Brocade Emperor's daughter Fu Ting included, he had not been too domineering. Mu Jun glanced at the massive vessel hovering above the Taiji diagram at the center of the Red Lotus. It is rumored that the Grand Plainness Origin Lady was used to being arrogant and domineering in her youth. Her relationship with the Brocade Emperor is hard to say. However, it is certain that she has a terrible relationship with my master. Mu Jun laughed bitterly. "You're close to our sect, and you're close to Junior Sister Fu. It's very easy for them to vent their anger on you. Many people believed that experts should be broad-minded. Otherwise, there was something wrong with their temperament. But in reality, there was no absolute connection between the two. There were some top-notch experts who did things in a grand manner, but there were also many who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance and had a perverse temperament. The most common situation was actually doing things according to one's heart and not stifling oneself. If they were willing to be magnanimous and considerate of others, then so be it. If they were unwilling, then exterminating an entire clan would be no big deal. Most of the time, what a bystander saw was only one side of someone. Yen Zhaoge, on the other hand, was very accepting of this. In his own Broad Creed Mountain, there was a senior apprentice aunt, Fu Enshu. Towards Yen Zhaoge, she was gradually only left with the praise and gratification of the clan's seniors. However, he was still brooding over Xue Chuqing even to this day. While she had never mentioned it, Yen Zhaoge knew that Fu Enshu was very concerned about Xue Chuqing's matter, not being any inferior to Yen Di and his father. "Since you're already here, according to etiquette, you should at least go up and say hello." Yen Zhaoge smiled. "At the very least, the Brocade Emperor is about to battle Mars Halberd. It can't be that this Grand Plainness Origin Lady will start a fire in his backyard at this time, right?" Mu Jun thought for a moment and said, "It's better for you to go up alone now. Otherwise, when Junior Sister Fu comes and you go up together, I'm afraid Senior Tao will make things difficult for you. Whatever the case, the Brocade Emperor once personally invited you and your father to the minor no-hatred Tao arena as guests." Yen Zhaoge shrugged. "Please wait, Mr. Mu. This Yin will be right back." As he finished speaking, he strode towards the Red Lotus skyship. Just as they neared the Taiji diagram, they saw a beam of light fall from the Red Lotus skyship, sending a portion of the people off. Gazing into the distance, Yen Zhaoge saw that one of them was precisely Zheng Emo, Guan Yulua, and the others who had just ascended. Aside from the people from the northern Profound Heaven Realm's Profound Remnant Monastery, there was another group of people who also disembarked. However, Guan Yulua seemed to be arguing with those people. Her voice resounded in the distance within Yen Zhaoge's ears, that Yen Zhaoge only managed to obtain a few treasures by chance, thus being able to achieve his current accomplishments. Miss Guan's words are a little exaggerated. Guan Yulua stopped and said unhappily, "Senior brothers of Nongli Mountain, aren't you the one who is biased? If the solar luminary young master did not possess true ability, how could he have obtained the favor of the Brocade Emperor and the Southeastern Exalt? Nongli Mountain, the legendary west peak of Taoism in the distant era before the Great Calamity, together with the middle peak, Kunlun Peak, East Peak, and Broad Creed Peak, they were known as the five peaks of Taoism. In the present day after the Great Calamity, there were still people in the world beyond worlds who had re-established their lineage under this name. The Western Turtle Heaven territories, Nongli Mountain, was where the Western Exalt's Tao Arena was located. Hearing Guan Yulua's question, that Nongli Mountain martial practitioner was neither flustered nor flustered. How exactly the Brocade Emperor sees him is another matter altogether. As for the Southeastern Exalt, it is probably more on account of the extreme Yang Seal and the extreme Yin Crown, as well as the exalted solar luminary and the exalted lunar luminary, right? That person shook his head. Still, it is uncertain whether these two major figures are related to that Yen Zhaoga, right? These two major figures of legend have already not appeared for over 1,000 years. The so-called solar luminary young master title is also just a figment of some people's imagination. How can it be taken seriously? Seeing Guan Yulua's dissatisfied expression, the other party smiled. Others aside, even the Southeastern Exalt has never acknowledged this title before, right? Miss Guan, please speak cautiously, lest others misunderstand that this is the Northern Exalt's will. I'm afraid that even the Northern Exalt has never said this before. Guan Yulua felt slightly stifled. Her grandfather, the Northern Exalt, had indeed never acknowledged Yen Zhaoga's title as the solar luminary young master on any occasion. She snorted, "You have also never seen Mr. Yen in person. It is all just your guesses." Guan Yulua did not have any special relationship with Yen Zhaoga, as they had only met once earlier. Still, as Yen Zhaoga and Feng Yinsheng were of the same lineage, Guan Yulua unconsciously defended him somewhat. 6th level martial saint, late seeing divinity stage before 40 years of age. How many have achieved this since ancient times till now? Hearing her words, the Nongli Mountain martial practitioners could not help but laugh. Even faster than ingenious Flying Peak's Grand Red Lotus? He must have been lying about his age. Guan Yulua looked at Zheng Mo. Eldest apprentice uncle, there shouldn't be a problem with Mr. Yan's age, right? Zheng Mo shook his head slightly, saying mildly, "At the very least, I cannot see any problem with it." The laughter of those Nongli Mountain martial practitioners halted. Still, they could not really question the famed Zheng Mo of the 8th level of the martial saint realm. Still, one of them quickly asked, "I believe that you, Bai Tian Zheng, did not personally clash with him?" Zheng Mo said candidly, "Since we met once, I naturally did not clash with him." That Nongli Mountain martial practitioner clapped. "That is naturally the case. This Yen Zhaoga and the sect he hails from have been able to cause some disturbances purely because of external objects. Perhaps he has some special methods of the evil, crooked path to conceal himself. How could such a heaven-shocking, earth-shocking figure be produced by a minor sect from the lower worlds? Even if he truly possessed outstanding talent, he would still have been buried and wasted by the environment of the lower worlds. Having come to the world beyond worlds, possessing many great treasures on him, he can only put on a false front if he wants stability. First, he faked the name of Taoism's East Peak. Next, he resorted to trickery and deceit. It is all for the same goal. This Nongli Mountain martial practitioner chuckled. It is fortunate that they are so scheming. Otherwise, how could they have gained the trust of Golden Court Mountain? How could they have caused so many disturbances in the world beyond worlds? Guan Yulua said huffily, "Is your sect unhappy that Broad Creed Mountain also originated from the name of one of the 5 peaks of Taoism in pre-Great Calamity times?" Hearing her words, The Nongli Mountain martial practitioner was not enraged, as he instead smiled. This is only natural, isn't it? Who would be willing to be on par with such fame-seeking people? They don't even have an immortal bridge martial saint. Are they even worthy? Zhang Mo silently glanced at the other party. As far as he knew, this was probably not the only reason. The relationship between the Western Exalt and the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia was very poor. Apart from that, while he was not on bad terms with the Brocade Emperor, the Western Exalt was also very friendly with the Heaven Emperor, as they interacted frequently. Guan Yulua said, the star-plucking practitioner of the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory, an expert of the 9th level of the Martial Saint Realm, perished at the foot of Broad Creed Mountain. They merely relied on external objects, that Nongli Mountain martial practitioner said mildly. Still, their methods are unable to do anything to human exalts. As his voice drifted into Yen Zhaoga's ears, he chuckled, walking forward neither hurriedly nor slowly. Chapter 9:28. Seeing Guan Yulua arguing with the disciples of the Western Exalt's lineage of Nongli Mountain, Zhang Mo rarely interjected. Cloud Pavilion Mountain's profound remnant monastery didn't have any conflicts with Nongli Mountain. They did not have any special relationship with the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Golden Court Mountain. Guan Yulua's argument with the other party was mostly because Feng Yansheng was from Broad Creed Mountain. She was young and her seniority was low. While she was the granddaughter of the Northern Exalt, there were still some things that she could say, but Zhang Mo couldn't casually express his support. The Northern Exalt resided in the northern profound heaven territory of the world beyond worlds, and would not come out easily, having come to extra-dimensional space this time to spectate the battle between the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd. Zhang Mo's words and actions were no longer just related to him. To a certain extent, he represented the Northern Exalt, as he naturally had to be cautious. He and Yen Zhaoga had only met once, having exchanged a few simple words. It definitely couldn't be said that they had a deep understanding of each other. However, Zhang Mo felt that the young man was not someone who was trying to fish for fame. In belittling Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain, these Nongli Mountain martial practitioners were not just feeling indignant that a sect from a lower world was ranked alongside them. At the same time, it was also because of the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Golden Court Mountain, as the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia and the Southern Exalt Zhuang Shen clashed this time. The Western Exalt had just happened to be in secluded cultivation. Recently, the Western Exalt had left seclusion. Having never been on good terms with the Southeastern Exalt, he probably intended to join forces with the Southern Exalt. The Western Exalt's relationship with the Brocade Emperor was also not bad. In the conflict between him and the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia, the Brocade Emperor would either mediate or not help either side. With the Heaven Emperor diverting the Brocade Emperor's attention, and the Western Exalt and the Southern Exalt joining forces, the Southeastern Exalt's days would not be so easy. Broad Creed Mountain, who was very close to Golden Court Mountain, was naturally even more of an eyesore to Nongli Mountain. Zhang Mo shook his head slightly. Suddenly, he had an idea. Of all the people present, his cultivation was the highest, and he was the strongest. Therefore, he was the first to feel that something was amiss. Gazing over to the side, he shockingly saw the white-clothed, blue-robed Yen Zhaoga, his eyes like bright stars, currently walking over neither hurriedly nor slowly. Yen Zhaoga's expression was relaxed, the corners of his mouth even carrying an indistinct hint of a smile. Seeing Zhang Mo glance over, Yen Zhaoga smiled and nodded in greeting. But when Zhang Mo saw that smile, his heart skipped a beat. He heard everything. Yen Zhaoga leisurely scanned the crowd, his gaze shifting from Zhang Mo to another person. It was a young woman who looked to be around 27 or 28 years old, close to 30. She wasn't beautiful or ugly, but she had a certain bearing that wouldn't make others feel that she was mediocre. Looking at the patterns on his clothes, he seemed to be a disciple of ingenious Flying Peak. It was just that as compared to Fu Ting and the others whom Yen Zhaoge had seen earlier, this woman's attire seemed slightly different. Yen Zhaoge seemed to realize something. He is not from Red Lotus Cliff. Instead, he is a descendant of another cave manor of ingenious Flying Peak. The Brocade Emperor was the lord of ingenious Flying Peak. Still, it was Red Lotus Cliff that was his official Dao, arena, and cave manor. People like Fu Ting could all be considered his direct lineage disciples. Apart from the Red Lotus Cliff, there were other cave abodes in the ingenious Flying Peak that were opened by the Grand Plainness Origin Lord, Tao Yu, and the others. They were all descendants of Taoist Xuanzhong, of the Grand Clear Direct lineage. Still, ingenious Flying Peak was now collectively known as the Brocade Emperor's lineage. After all, the difference between immortals and immortals was that between humans and immortals. After ascending to the immortal realm, many things were no longer the same. It was only internally that the cave manors of the various lineages were divided. Still, it was not strictly so, as it was just a difference in lineage. This young woman was the personal disciple of the Grand Plainness Origin, Lady Tao Yu. Lonely Mountain and ingenious Flying Peak were on good terms, especially the Grand Plainness Origin Lady Tao Yu, who had been close friends with the Western Exalt's wife since their youth. Therefore, after the Lonely Mountain martial practitioners had paid their respects to Tao Yu, she had dispatched disciples to escort them off the vessel. Zheng Emo understood the situation in this regard. Therefore, he could not help but frown as he saw Yen Zhaoge. While he had not interacted much with Yen Zhaoge, he could vaguely feel that this was a rather spirited person. Martial practitioners were mostly unyielding in their temperaments. This was especially so for someone like Yen Zhaoge, who had risen to fame in his youth. While he did not intentionally show off, he did not conceal his cultivation base as well. Clearly, he was not someone who kept a low profile. If the Lonely Mountain martial practitioners mocked him, he would probably flare up on the spot. News of Yen Zhaoge killing a disciple of the Southern Exalt Shuangshen had already spread throughout the world beyond worlds. His grandmaster, the old chief of Broad Creed Mountain, Yuan Zhengfeng, had also slain many martial practitioners of the Southern Blazing Heaven territory when he had accompanied the Southeastern Swords Mistress and the others in resisting them. While these Lonely Mountain martial practitioners were of the Western Exalt's lineage, Yen Zhaoge would not tolerate them. The problem, however, was that they were currently in the territory of ingenious Flying Peak. It could even be said that they were in the territory of the Grand Plainness Origin, Lady Tao Yu. As someone of the Northern Exalt's lineage, Cloud Pavilion Mountain's profound remnant locale, Tao Yu was most likely helping Lonely Mountain in clashing with them here. Tao Yu herself was a late immortal bridge martial saint first. With her relationship with the Brocade Emperor being special, the consequences of Yen Zhaoge offending her here were self-evident. While it was rumored that the star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide had perished at Broad Creed Mountain, it was still hard to say who he had been slain by. At the end of the day, Yen Zhaoge was currently traveling alone in the outside world with little backing. Moreover, Guan Lide's personal strength was inferior to Tao Yu's even though they were both 9th-level martial saints. Also, Tao Yu was not a peaceful, introverted person either. Throughout the entire world beyond worlds, this Grand Plainness Origin lady was renowned for being domineering and arrogant. These Lonely Mountain martial practitioners are all-seeing divinity martial saints, as well, with many late-seeing divinity martial saints amongst them. Zheng Emo thought, let's just say that this Yen Zhaoge possesses outstanding strength and is able to fight them all alone. Still, if he makes a move here and offends the Grand Plainess Origin Lady, he will probably be at a disadvantage for sure. Glancing at Guan Yulo, Zhang Mo sighed inwardly. Forget it. Let's see if I can help them out. That female disciple of ingenious flying peak similarly did not interrupt the debate between Guan Yulo and the Nongli mountain martial practitioners. Still, when she noticed Zhang Mo's abnormality, she followed his gaze and looked over. The people in the midst of their debate seemed to have sensed something, as well as they all turned to look over. Still, before they could clearly see what was happening, everything before their eyes suddenly turned dark. Silent, soundless black light instantly expanded, enveloping the surrounding area as it was like night had descended without any prior warning whatsoever. Enveloped by night, all was silent. Yan Zhaoge leisurely walked out from within. Zhang Mo's pupils abruptly dilated as he scanned his surroundings. Those Nongli mountain disciples all seemed to have lost their senses at this moment. While their eyes were wide open, their gazes were lifeless as they resembled wooden puppets, their figures also frozen where they were, not moving at all. However, the profound remnant locale martial practitioners nearby, including Guan Yulo, who had the lowest cultivation base at the martial grandmaster realm, were not affected at all as they just appeared rather dazed. That ingenious flying peak disciple was taken aback for a moment before a shocked look appeared on her face. Yan Zhaoge did not even look at those Nongli mountain martial practitioners as he smiled nonchalantly. I am surnamed Yan Zhaoge, coming here to spectate the battle between the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd. I have disturbed your lineage. Therefore, I have specially come to pay a visit to the Grand Plainess Origin Lady. Please do not take offense to my lack of manners. Chapter 9:29. Is it the thunder of eternal night? Zhang Mo was knowledgeable and possessed extraordinary discernment as he quickly saw through the darkness before him. The thunder of eternal night would manifest boundless darkness, resembling the descent of the eternal night as it suppressed the sensory abilities and thoughts of the opponent. It was not in its direct destructive power that it was difficult to deal with. After the power of the thunder had reached a certain level, those enveloped by the thunder of eternal night would be unable to think, unable to hear, unable to see, unable to feel as though they were in a deep slumber. At this point, they would naturally be at the mercy of others. This was the true power and profundities of the thunder of eternal night that was one of the 9 heavenly immortal thunders. Still, this method was directly related to the cultivation bases of the enemy and ally. Zhang Mo had truly not thought that Yan Zhaoge's thunder of eternal night would be able to cause seeing divinity martial saints to fall into a deep slumber with no way of retaliating. Also, it was not just 1 or 2 of them, but a whole bunch. Zhang Mo was even more shocked when Yan Zhaoge wielded thunder arts, manifesting boundless darkness that enveloped the surroundings. Yet, the martial practitioners of the Northern Profound Heaven Territory's profound remnant locale, who were similarly enveloped in darkness, were not affected in the least. The thunder of eternal night only targeted Nongli mountain martial practitioners. Even Guan Yulo, who was a martial grandmaster, was not affected. This sufficiently showed that Yan Zhaoge was able to handle this as though it were light, as he was able to do so with ease. The stronger a martial practitioner's cultivation base, the more powerful the thunder of eternal night that they wielded would be. How powerful must Yan Zhaoge's cultivation base be for him to be able to do this? Zhang Mo was actually unable to ascertain it for a time. Still, he was certain that it far surpassed that of ordinary divinity martial saints. His fame is not in vain. Zhang Mo sighed in admiration, but he did not relax. But this is in front of the Grand Plainess Origin Lady, with the 2 of them right beneath the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. No matter what they did, it would not escape the notice of Tao Yu, who was a 9th-level martial saint on board. Indeed, a cold snort resounded from the massive divine vessel. Streams of plain-colored cloud chi arose in the surroundings. Where the cloud chi passed, it was not devoured by the darkness, as it instead seemed to be diluted, causing the darkness of the night to no longer be pure. A vast white scene was actually formed amidst the dark night. But in the next moment, boundless light shone outside the darkness. The light enveloped the darkness, but the darkness remained the same. Instead, the sunlight was like a canopy that covered the darkness. Illuminated by this sunlight, the plain-colored cloud chi was instantly unable to penetrate the darkness. Extreme Young Seal? A woman's voice rang out from the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. She said coldly, "Even if I don't use a high-quality saint artifact, you won't be able to stop me." The huge Red Lotus heavenly ship that was originally floating in the void suddenly shook. It was as if a red lotus had bloomed around the huge warship. A brilliance like that of a blazing flame immediately spread out. The huge red lotus that occupied the void seemed to be swaying with the wind at this moment. The other cultivators on the petals of the red lotus all looked at the center of the red lotus strangely. Where the red lotus heavenly vessel was, the Taiji diagram flew up, sucking in the extreme Yang seal, having been modified by the Brocade Emperor. This massive divine vessel was much stronger than ordinary riding wind heavenly vessels. Although it wasn't a rare treasure, it was a weapon of war in itself. While the extreme Yang seal was powerful, as Yen Zhaoge had yet to attain the Immortal Bridge stage, he was unable to unleash its full power. The Taiji diagram formed of black and white chis did not clash head-on, as it merely stuck to the extreme Yang seal, temporarily preventing it from descending. This short period of time was enough for the people on the sky ship to take action. Without any prior warning whatsoever, a palm traversed the darkness, arriving before Yen Zhaoge. Yen Zhaoge's expression did not change as he directly raised a massive axe of white jade, chopping down towards that slender hand that seemed weak yet was actually terrifying. As the two forces clashed, the veil of night that enveloped everyone virtually seemed about to rip apart. Yet, Yen Zhaoge tapped out lightly with his other hand. Beneath the effects of the yin-yang finger, numerous wild tides surged unceasingly beneath the veil of night, yet achieved a miraculous equilibrium. The dark night, formed of the thunder of eternal night, remained unbroken. Zheng Mo and the others watched this scene in shock. Besides the extreme Yang seal, Yen Zhaoge actually possessed a high-grade sacred artifact as well. Still, the key was that Yen Zhaoge, who was a late-seeing divinity martial saint, was actually forcibly resisting Tao Yu, who was a late immortal bridge martial saint. Even with a high-grade sacred artifact in hand, Yen Zhaoge, who had yet to ascend the immortal bridge, would still be unable to wield the full power of the heaven-earth reversing axe. Still, Tao Yu was also not someone ordinary ninth-level martial saints could compare to. At the very least, Zheng Mo had the confidence to challenge many ninth-level martial saints. Against Tao Yu, however, he lacked that confidence somewhat. In a clash between two evenly matched experts, unless both sides intentionally controlled themselves, they would definitely be unable to take care of the surrounding situation. Tao Yu would not help Yen Zhaoge maintain the veil of night. She had originally been aiming to break through the thunder of eternal night, yet her attack had been forcibly dispelled by Yen Zhaoge. While I do not like being slandered behind my back, I originally had no intention of quibbling with people of this level. Yen Zhaoge chuckled. Still, from the looks of it seems that I have acted improperly. Guan Yulua now reacted as well as she hurriedly said, "Calm down, Mr. Yen." While she was inclined towards Broad Creed Mountain and Yen Zhaoge, Guan Yulua also did not wish for Yen Zhaoge to act rashly now and anger Tao Yu. Hearing Yen Zhaoge's words, she could not help but sigh in relief. Who knew that Yen Zhaoge would then say leisurely, if it suits the Grand Plainness Origin Lady's intentions to just slaughter them, I would not mind it." Guan Yulua instantly stared wide-eyed at his words, even Zhang Mo feeling slightly suffocated. It was said that the Grand Plainness Origin Lady Tao Yu was famed for being arrogant and domineering. Still, she seemed to pale in comparison to Yan Zhaoge. Still, everyone felt shocked and shocked. Indeed, those Nongli Mountain disciples were still alive. The envelopment of the thunder of eternal night only deprived one of their 5 senses, as it would not harm them. Yan Zhaoge also did not attack those Nongli Mountain disciples who seemed to be in deep slumber. Still, when the light of thunder that ripped apart the dark night arose, the thunderbolts would claim their lives. From a certain perspective, the lives of these Nongli Mountain martial practitioners were all in Yan Zhaoge's hands now. The expression of that ingenious flying peak disciple turned solemn. Not only had so many seeing divinity martial saints been instantly defeated by Yan Zhaoge, they had even been unable to control their own fates. She too was a late seeing divinity martial saint. As a direct descendant of ingenious Flying Peak's grand clear lineage, she possessed extraordinary strength, as she stably defeated everyone else at the same cultivation level aside from Zhang Mo. Still, if Yan Zhaoge were to make a move, not just targeting the Nongli Mountain martial practitioners alone, instead including her as well, would she be able to resist him? Thinking of this, she could already feel cold sweat forming on her palms. Yan Zhaoge had a relaxed expression on his face as he seemed completely unaware of what a world-shocking thing he was currently doing in the eyes of others. Wielding the heaven-earth reversing axe, he looked in the direction of the red lotus heavenly vessel as he smiled neither hurriedly nor slowly. "I believe that the Grand Plainness Origin Lady also hates them for bringing shame to the Western Exalt's lineage, right? Since that is so, this Yin will step out of his place and help the Western Exalt clean up those unfilial disciples. They were enemies, and not friends anyway, as they had joined forces with the Southern Blazing Heaven territory to find trouble for them." Yan Zhaoge smiled. "Rest easy, Grand Plainness Origin Lady. This place will not be dirted, not affecting the grand battle between the 2 emperors." That ingenious Flying Peak disciple had a strange expression on his face. It was as if he was helping the Grand Plainness Origin Lady resolve her problems, while the Grand Plainness Origin Lady was worried about him, wanting to help him resist the Western Exalt. How thick must one's skin be to be able to say something like this? Chapter 9:30. On the Red Lotus heavenly ship, the woman's voice resounded. "You are threatening me?" Yan Zhaoge said mildly, "You must be joking, Origin Lady. While this Yen isn't talented, I don't have the heart to stoop to the level of people of their level. This Yen has always been grateful for the Brocade Emperor's courteous treatment towards this Yen. Now that the great battle between him and Mars Halberd is imminent, it would not be nice for a conflict to occur here and now. We met face to face. In order to prevent people who don't know their place from causing trouble, I took precautionary measures. I didn't think that it would cause a misunderstanding. However, I really don't care about their lives." Zhang Mo and the other profound remnant locale martial practitioners exchanged glances with the ingenious Flying Peak disciple who had sent the guests off, speechless. He was not in the mood to lower himself to their level. A person who doesn't know his place, he didn't care about their lives. These people that Yan Zhaoge spoke of were all-seeing divinity martial saints. Also, it was not an ordinary lineage. Instead, it was the lineage of the Western Exalt of Nongli Mountain in the Western Turtle Heaven territory. Those who could rampantly move about would also possess powerful backgrounds and outstanding strength in the entire world beyond worlds. Although none of them were on the level of Zhang Mo, who could cultivate to the level of seeing divinity martial saint, was not a genius. Looking back at his youth, each and every one of them stood out from countless others. If it had been Zheng Emo saying this, it would have been fine. Still, the problem was that Yen Zhaoga's current cultivation base was also that of a seeing divinity martial saint. Besides Zheng Emo and Guan Yulua, the other profound remnant locale martial practitioners and that ingenious flying peak disciple were also seeing divinity martial practitioners. But when they saw those Nongli Mountain disciples, they couldn't help but smile bitterly in their hearts. Profound remnant locale, a personal disciple of the Northern Exalt. Nongli Mountain, a personal disciple of the Western Exalt. Ingenious flying peak, a personal disciple of the Brocade Emperor. Anyone from any family was a proud son of heaven. But now, why did they feel that this group of people really wasn't on the same level as this white-robed, blue-robed youth in front of them? Does progenitor think that I should take the initiative to avoid these vile people who talk behind their backs? Ha ha! Yen Zhaoga raised his head to look at the red lotus heavenly vessel. Are they even worthy? Guan Yulua looked dazedly at Yen Zhaoga. Speaking of which, in some people's eyes, perhaps this was how it should be. One side was the direct disciple of a dignified supreme martial artist, while the other side was merely from a lower realm sect. Even if the former's words were a little disdainful, and the latter was dissatisfied, he could just avoid it. Otherwise, even if you could take care of these Nongli Mountain disciples, wouldn't you still have to bear the consequences of angering the Western Exalt as a result? It was even to the extent that he might infuriate the Grand Plainess Origin lady, who was close friends with the Western Exalt's wife, causing him to immediately suffer a loss. However, when all this fell on Yen Zhaoga, Guan Yulua felt as though it was only natural. If Yen Zhaoga swallowed this, it would instead be abnormal. Even when the Grand Plainess progenitor made a move, he still resisted. For such a person to avoid those Nongli Mountain disciples, wasn't that a joke? A voice came from the Red Lotus sky ship. Oh, your words are interesting. Still, if the Western Exalt was here, I wonder if you would still be so arrogant. Yen Zhaoga said mildly, perhaps I might not be able to claim their lives, but I am still willing to try. The woman's voice came from the Ark again. Senior Marshal Brother, you are going to fight Mars Halberd, which will attract the attention of the whole world. You really shouldn't get involved. I'm here to deal with some ignorant people who have come to make trouble. Aren't you going to board the ship? Come on up. Guan Yulua looked rather worriedly at Yen Zhaoga. Tao Yu's words were rather ambiguous, as she seemed to agree with Yen Zhaoga's words, yet also seemed to be referring to something else. Having boarded the Red Lotus sky ship, Tao Yu would hold the home ground advantage. Even if something happened on board, it would be very hard for the outside world to know about it. This 9th-level martial saint had not wielded a weapon when they had clashed just now. I was just planning to do so. Yen Zhaoga laughed, cupping his hands towards Zheng Emo, Guan Yulua, and the others as he took his leave before turning to look at that female disciple of ingenious flying peak. While her expression was rather complex, she still led Yen Zhaoga aboard the vessel. As soon as Yen Zhaoga left, the dark light of thunder that enveloped the surroundings did not explode as it soundlessly dispersed. Those of Nongli Mountain, who had been suppressed by the thunder of eternal night earlier, regained their senses. They were still gazing in the direction from which Yen Zhaoga had come, seeing Golden Court Mountain's Mujun. Nongli Mountain and Golden Court Mountain were not on good terms. Upon seeing Mujun of the immortal Bridge Martial Saint Realm, these Nongli Mountain martial practitioners all appeared very wary. Retracting their gazes, they discovered that the disciple of ingenious flying peak, who had escorted them off the vessel earlier, had vanished. Feeling rather puzzled, they asked Zheng Emo and the others about this. Those of profound remnant locale had strange expressions on their faces as they appraised them with rather strange gazes. A few Nongli Mountain martial practitioners had blank looks on their faces. What is it? Mu Jun first greeted Zheng Emo before appraising those Nongli mountain martial practitioners, shaking his head and smiling. It looks like, young master, Yen did not go all out, not detonating the thunder of eternal night. The other party was taken aback as his hairs stood on end. Thunder of eternal night. Yen, those of the Western Exalt's lineage were all knowledgeable, as they had naturally heard of the infamy of the thunder of eternal night. Thinking of its use and what Mu Jun had said, they gradually understood. Don't speak nonsense. They all unconsciously looked at the profound, remnant, low-cal, martial practitioners beside them. Zheng Emo sighed, not speaking. They had no conflict with Nongli Mountain, as they did not intend to kick them when they were down. Still, the silence of those of profound, remnant, low-cal already represented the answer. The Nongli mountain martial practitioners were all taken aback. How is this possible? They hurriedly scanned their surroundings, only to see the martial practitioners of other powers seemingly appraising them curiously in the distance. Still, seeing that the Red Lotus heavenly vessel had regained its calm, they retracted their attention. Still, this already told these Nongli mountain martial practitioners that something had indeed drawn the attention of others earlier. The problem was, even now, they still could not recall what exactly had happened earlier. This meant that someone had truly robbed them of their senses. A Nongli mountain martial practitioner asked with much difficulty, was it really that Yen Zhaoga? Just him alone? Guan Yulua hesitated for a moment before nodding. Where is he now? He has already boarded the vessel. The Nongli mountain martial practitioners were all rendered dazed like wooden chickens. The ingenious Flying Peak disciple who had just sent them off the vessel had suddenly vanished, precisely confirming Guan Yulua's words. It was not that he had suddenly vanished. Instead, too many things had happened while they had been unaware of it. Thinking of how Yen Zhaoga had brushed past them earlier, when they had been completely unable to sense him at all, and how the thunder of eternal night had not exploded, all the Nongli mountain martial practitioners felt a chill run down their necks. Their earlier questioning of Yen Zhaoga was still ringing in their ears. The other party had most likely heard it, yet could not even be bothered to refute it. Still, not refuting it did not mean that there had been no reaction. Therefore, they had lost. Not only had they lost all of Nongli Mountain's face as well. They had not even been able to see Yen Zhaoga, unable to see with their own eyes what this person looked like. Chapter 931. Some Nongli mountain martial practitioners unwillingly sought confirmation from Zheng Emo. Mu Jun hailed from Golden Court Mountain and was an enemy rather than a friend. With the two sides even on the verge of war, they were naturally unwilling to believe Mu Jun's words. In the end, they despaired. Whether or not Yen Zhaoga had not killed or injured them due to the Grand Plainness Origin Lady's pressure, they had been unable to resist at all. They had not even seen Yen Zhaoga's appearance before they had been subdued, unable to decide whether they lived or died. Let alone Golden Court Mountain's Mu Jun, there was also a group of profound, remnant, low-cal martial practitioners up close who had witnessed this. This was especially so when he had been arguing with the young lady earlier, when his face had been ripped off completely by Yen Zhaoga in the blink of an eye, thrown to the ground, and even stomped on twice. Those of Nongli Mountain simply wished they could find a hole in the ground to burrow into. Looking rather worriedly at the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, Guan Yuluo asked Zheng Emo via sound transmission, "Eldest apprentice uncle, will anything happen to Mr. Yen if he goes up like this?" "He won't." Zheng Emo shook his head slightly. "While this person is arrogant and domineering, he is not someone who gets carried away by success. He is not recklessly boarding the vessel." Guan Yuluo looked curiously at Zheng Emo. Zheng Emo said mildly, "The Brocade Emperor is the one in charge of ingenious Flying Peak at the end of the day." It was true that the Grand Plainess origin Lady Tao Yu was at odds with the southeastern exalt Chao Jia and Fu Ting. It was also true that her relationship with the Brocade Emperor was not as simple as that of senior apprentice brother and junior apprentice sister. Still, whether or not she was on good terms with Nongli Mountain, however arrogant and domineering she was, a single fact could not be changed. The Brocade Emperor was the true lord of ingenious Flying Peak, one of the world beyond world's 5 emperors. Before the Brocade Emperor had clearly expressed his stance, Tao Yu would not really make things difficult for Yan Zhaoge. If she could easily take care of Yan Zhaoge, she would certainly not mind standing up for her best friend, teaching this arrogant and impolite junior a lesson. Still, discovering that Yan Zhaoge was not as easy to deal with as she had previously thought, Tao Yu naturally had to be cautious. After all, she knew that the Brocade Emperor had invited Yan Di and Yan Zhaoge to the minor no-hatred Dao arena as guests. While she could not be certain about the Brocade Emperor's feelings towards Yan Di and Yan, she could not be. Moreover, the appointed battle between the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd was imminent. Tao Yu had come here to watch over the Brocade Emperor rather than to cause trouble. If it had been another time and place, Tao Yu's arrogant temper would have flared up. Even if he didn't intend to kill Yan Zhaoge, he would still have shed all pretense of cordiality and properly measure Yan Zhaoge's worth. But now, she was the one who had to swallow her anger. This young man is really not simple. Zhang Emo also looked towards the Red Lotus skyship. While the broad Creed Mountain that Yan Zhaoge hailed from had the name of Taoism's East Peak, everyone knew that it was unrelated to the 5 peaks of Taoism of pre-Great Calamity times, instead originating from a lower world. While the speed at which sects of the lower worlds rose to prominence was shockingly fast, having stabilized their footing in the world beyond worlds within a short few years, they had not been able to do so. Yet in the eyes of the peak legacies of the world beyond worlds, Broad Creed Mountain was still a small sect, let alone the 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and the exalts of 10 territories. Broad Creed Mountain did not even have a single immortal bridge martial saint. The star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide, Shun Lingzi, Daoist Shi, and King Xuanqing had indeed perished at Broad Creed Mountain. Still, as most people outside of the southeastern Yangheaven territory saw it, it was because of the immortal artifact, the extreme Yang seal, and the extreme Yin crown. While they were curious as to how such a weak power like Broad Creed Mountain was able to wield an immortal artifact, it was destined that they would not be able to do so for long. Many people saw Broad Creed Mountain like a 10-year-old child who was ostentatiously parading through the streets while wielding a priceless treasure. If not for the protection of the southeastern exalt and the unclear stance of the Brocade Emperor, it would have long since been plundered clean by others. Even the southern exalt Zhuangshen had explicitly ordered his disciples not to covet the dim radiant wheel. Still, not coveting the dim radiant wheel and not dealing with Broad Creed Mountain were 2 different things altogether. If there was a chance, he would definitely not mind destroying Broad Creed Mountain. It was just that he would keep a respectful distance from the dim, radiant wheel, not collecting it. Broad Creed Mountain also had many other treasures. The martial practitioners of profound remnant locale did not have much of a relationship with Broad Creed Mountain. Still, they had a pretty good impression of Broad Creed Mountain because Feng Yinsheng had saved Guan Yulua. Still, they might not really think highly of Broad Creed Mountain. It was only when they had seen Yan Zhaoge that their impression of Broad Creed Mountain gradually changed. Now that they had witnessed Yan Zhaoge's methods, they truly saw him in a different light. Zhang Mo gazed at Golden Court Mountain's Mu Jun, sensing his gaze. Mu Jun did not speak as he instead looked towards the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. Nongli Mountain's legacy was not something that ordinary legacies could compare to. Everyone knew that the spatial heavenly scripture of the Jade Clear Direct lineage was one of the 10 primordial heavenly scriptures. While it was not suited for dealing with the thunder of eternal night, they were all seeing divinity martial saints at the end of the day. There were even late seeing divinity martial saints amongst them. Mu Jun was an early immortal bridge martial saint with the foundation of Golden Court Mountain's direct lineage. While it would not be a problem for him to defeat these Nongli mountain martial practitioners, it would be completely impossible for him to capture all of them alive in virtually an instant. Resist, defeat, kill, capture alive. From low to high, the difficulty was completely different. Mu Jun could not help but wonder what the outcome would be if he were to face Yen Zhaoge. After thinking for a moment, Mu Jun could not help but laugh, feeling that it was best for him not to continue thinking about this problem. It was just that he could not help but feel a little despondent. How long had it been since he had first met Yen Zhaoge? Yen Zhaoge was not concerned about the thoughts of those below the vessel. He boarded the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, entering its cabin under the guidance of that ingenious Flying Peak disciple. The layout of the cabin was exceptionally luxurious. Yen Zhaoge's eyelids twitched. Scanning slightly, he saw many rare treasures that were virtually extinct even in the world beyond worlds. It was not an exaggeration that the Brocade Emperor loved to enjoy life. Still, the one controlling this divine vessel was a woman at this moment. She appeared to be in her 20s or 30s, the prime age for women to bloom. She was indeed a rare beauty. Still, there was a hint of arrogance between her brows. Currently, she was not smiling as she looked rather unfriendly. Junior Yen Zhaoge greets the Grand Plainess Origin Lady. Yen Zhaoge's expression was relaxed, as all was normal. The person before him was naturally the owner of ingenious Flying Peak's Clear Spring Cave, the Grand Plainess Origin Lady. Tao Yu appraised Yen Zhaoge all over before suddenly saying after a while, "It is not just the thunder of eternal night. The direct lineage of the dim radiant sect is not the dim radiant scripture, but the dim radiant 12 arts. It is the aeon light heavenly scripture of the jade clear direct lineage's 10 primordial heavenly scriptures. There is also a martial art that I cannot be certain of. Still, it seems a little like the dark moon pill scripture that was lost after the great calamity. Other than that," Tao Yu frowned, "there is a supreme martial art that is integrated with the concept of space. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to suppress so many descendants of Nongli Mountain who cultivate in the spatial heavenly scripture. Still, there is not much involved in this martial art. You seem to be intentionally concealing it, as I cannot tell its origins." Yen Zhaoge met Tao Yu's gaze calmly, smiling after she had finished. "I also integrated some profundities of the faceless devil scripture within." Tao Yu's gaze was calm as she nodded slowly after a while. The profundities of so many martial arts are not simply pieced together. They actually vaguely show signs of being integrated. Yen Zhaoge, you indeed have the qualifications to be proud. Chapter 932. Looking at Tao Yu, Yen Zhaoge smiled. "Origin Lady overpraises me. Apart from the Jade Clear and Grand Clear direct lineages, the martial arts of Taoism that circulated in the world were more or less related to the Grand Clear lineage. As an expert of the 9th level of the martial saint realm and of the Grand Clear direct lineage, not only did Tao Yu recognize the dim radiant 12 arts, he even recognized the dark moon pill scripture. As she had said, the dark moon pill scripture had not circulated in the world beyond worlds of post-Great Calamity times. The reason why Tao Yu was able to recognize it was because his master had a long history. As for the Aeon Light heavenly scripture, it wasn't hard for her to recognize it. After all, the Jade Clear lineage's primordial heavenly scripture was too famous. What made Tao Yu somewhat suspicious was that the ultimate technique that involved the mysteries of space was naturally the immortal trapping sword. Still, While some of the concept of the immortal trapping sword manual had been integrated into Yan Zhaoga's Thunder of Eternal Night, Tao Yu was unable to see through it for the time being. Currently looking at Yan Zhaoga, there was still no good will to be seen within her eyes. While the Brocade Emperor was on good terms with the Southeastern Exalt, the conflict between Tao Yu and the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie was rather deep. Some of this had to do with the Western Exalt. Tao Yu and the Western Exalt's wife had been close friends since their youth, while the Western Exalt and Chao Jie were on bad terms. If it was said that Tao Yu and Chao Jie only disliked each other in the beginning, then after so many years the conflicts, both big and small, had gradually become irreconcilable. Even without the Western Exalt, it would already be difficult for Tao Yu and Chao Jie to walk together now. Moreover, when Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di had gone to the minor no-hatred Dao arena previously, it had been Fu Ting who had received them. Tao Yu had mixed feelings about Fu Ting. As she saw it, Fu Ting had definitely played a part in the Brocade Emperor treating Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di differently. On the other hand, Fu Ting was also very close to Golden Court Mountain. Tao Yu was naturally unhappy that Yan Zhaoga had a close relationship with both Chao Jie and Fu Ting at the same time. However, after the encounter just now, Tao Yu, just like Zheng Mo and the others, noticed that the young man before them seemed to be very different from what they had expected. Currently, the gaze with which she was looking at Yan Zhaoga did not contain any contempt at all. In that clash just now, even as Yan Zhaoga resisted her, he had also been able to maintain the thunder of eternal night that enveloped those of Nonely Mountain from being broken. This was equivalent to having won a move. It was true that Yan Zhaoga wielded the heaven-earth reversing axe. Yet, how many late-seeing divinity martial saints of the 6th level of the martial saint realm would be able to defeat her? Tao Yu, by relying on a high-grade sacred artifact that had yet to exert its full power. Fu Ting couldn't do it. Even mid-immortal bridge martial saints who were not on the level of Zheng Mo and Long Hanhua might not be able to accomplish this. However, Yan Zhaoga had done it. Tao Yu, who had always been arrogant, was also shocked at this moment. There was no need to mention the dim, radiant emperor, since he was already dead. Still, thinking of the extreme Yang seal and the extreme Yin crown, Tao Yu's mind was momentarily filled with countless thoughts. Yan Zhaoga stood unhurriedly, smiling as he looked at Tao Yu, his expression relaxed. The grand, clear, direct lineage was boundlessly profound. Ingenious Flying Peak did not possess just a single peak martial art, other than the Brocade Emperor, who might be a little special. Even if others were proficient in all peak martial arts, they would most likely focus on some. The fact that Tao Yu was called the Grand Plainness Origin Lady had already explained the problem. She and the lineage of her Clear Spring Cave would most likely focus more on the grand plainness immeasurable body of the grand cosmos 5 manifestations. Of all the cave manners of Ingenious Flying Peak aside from Red Lotus Cliff, her lineage was probably the one who had the deepest understanding of the grand plainness immeasurable body. The grand plainness immeasurable body was a peak defensive technique of Taoism that was comparable to the 5 elements deific immortal body of the life creation heavenly scripture of the Jade clear lineage. Tao Yu's defenses were extremely powerful. In the entire world beyond worlds, there were probably extremely few immortal bridge martial saints who possessed stronger defenses than her. Also, her attacks would probably still surpass those of most, such as the likes of the star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide. After all, Tao Yu was also proficient in supreme martial arts like the Taiji Yin Yang Palm. Still, compared to her own defenses or those of her lineage who were proficient in martial arts like the Taiji Yin Yang Palm, her attacks were not all that outstanding. It was just that this way, she would be completely unable to do anything to Yan Zhaoga. It was true that Tao Yu was arrogant. Before they had clashed, she had indeed not taken Yen Zhaoga seriously at all. Still, she was an actual expert at the end of the day. As the saying went, experts would be able to tell with a single move. With just a single exchange, Tao Yu already had a general estimate of the strength that Yen Zhaoga had displayed. This was someone whose strength far surpassed martial practitioners of the same cultivation level. Let alone her at the same cultivation level. He even surpassed Fu Ting at the same cultivation level. Tao Yu even felt that her senior apprentice brother, the lofty brocade emperor of the world beyond world's 5 emperors, would also be unable to defeat this youth at the same cultivation level. Tao Yu found this hard to believe. Yet, she had no choice but to believe it. Whatever her personal opinion of the southeastern exalt, Fu Ting, and Yen Zhaoga was, she had to admit that this was an unparalleled genius. If those Nongli Mountain disciples were to run over to her now and say that Yen Zhaoga had only relied on external objects like the extreme Yang seal and the like, not possessing any true abilities himself, Tao Yu would first give them a slap, waking up these people who were lying through their teeth. Even so, a disciple of Nongli Mountain had been slapped right before her eyes. If she did not do anything about it, she would not be Tao Yu. It was just that Tao Yu still felt rather hesitant at the end of the day. This was because the great battle between the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd was about to begin soon. While she felt much resentment towards Fu Ting, with the Brocade Emperor at stake, even the usually domineering Tao Yu hesitated. Now, the expressions of Yen Zhaoga and Tao Yu simultaneously changed slightly. Outside the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, another clump of red light suddenly appeared amidst the endless darkness of space. Crimson fiery light erupted, the entire surrounding space seemingly shaking for a moment. Yen Zhaoga and Tao Yu exchanged glances at this moment, looks of understanding appearing on their faces. Mars Halberd had arrived. Blazing fire spread amidst the darkness of space. The Red Lotus heavenly vessel that had originally seemed shocking immediately resembled a remnant flower amidst the wind as it shook unceasingly. A divinity of fire that stood on 2 dragons appeared amidst space. Meanwhile, the world formed of the fist and ten of the earth, Exalt had no choice but to retreat at this moment. I am already here. Where is Fu Yunqi? That majestic voice reverberated through the endless void at this moment. It lingered on endlessly, and everyone could hear it clearly. Fu Yunqi was precisely the name of Fu Ting's father, the Brocade Emperor. Still, there were probably no more than 10 people in the current world beyond worlds who dared to call him by his name directly. Tao Yu glanced at Yen Zhaoga before finally retracting her gaze, exiting the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. Gazing at that giant of flame in the distance, she inhaled deeply. The time has not come. Do not be hasty. That giant of flame did not go overboard. It is fine. I have already waited for so long. There is indeed no need to rush. With that, he stood upright amid space. His face was concealed by flames as no one could see it clearly. Still, everyone present felt as though a gaze was on them. Yen Zhaoga exited the Red Lotus heavenly vessel as well, looking rather interestedly at the distant Mars Halberd. Chapter 933. Mars Halberd didn't need to show his power. Just by appearing, he had already become the center of attention. Everyone was either in awe or curiosity, secretly sizing him up. However, when they looked over, they felt as if the other party was also staring at them. Even under the protection of the Earth's sovereign realm or the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, everyone felt their bodies burning up as if they were in a blazing hell. Most people were actually surprised. While the current supreme experts of the world beyond worlds, the earthly sovereign and the concealed sovereign of the 3 sovereigns were the exalted earth luminary, and the exalted concealed luminary of the Kunlun Nine luminaries of the past. The name of the Kunlun Nine luminaries was more of a legend than anything else. It seemed foreign and distant. People were already used to the high and mighty structure of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Now that an expert comparable to a great emperor had suddenly appeared, everyone was surprised. What was even more surprising was that this wasn't a powerhouse who pushed open the gate of immortality. It was a weapon with its own thoughts and ideas. This weapon was the weapon of the exalted fire luminary, one of the Kunlun Nine luminaries in the past. All of this made people feel even more astonished and even more legendary. The long river of history, which had gradually become silent, seemed to have recently stirred up new waves. Meanwhile, this expert who had suddenly appeared challenged the Brocade Emperor to a battle, setting off a battle between Emperor-level experts, which had not occurred for many years already. This was not just a simple spar, but a real battle with real swords and spears. Naturally, the attention of the entire world beyond worlds was focused on this. At this moment, Mars Halberd had already arrived. Everyone was looking forward to the arrival of the other party. Yen Zhaoge smiled, cupping his hands towards Tao Yu. This Yen also feels rather fortunate to be able to attend such a grand event this time. I thank your clan for your magnanimity here. When I went to the minor no-hatred Dao arena, previously I was unable to meet the Brocade Emperor, feeling deeply regretful about it. If the Brocade Emperor is free after this battle, I hope to pay him a visit. I would like to trouble the Origin Lady to convey this Yan's intentions on my behalf. With that, Yen Zhaoge took his leave, disembarking the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. Looking at Yen Zhaoge's back and Mars Halberd in the distance, Tao Yu could only let out a helpless sigh. As Yen Zhaoge disembarked, he saw a figure appear in the distance, rapidly approaching. It was Fu Ting. After paying a visit to the Earth Exalt and learning that it was Tao Yu who had led Ingenious Flying Peak's team over to support the Brocade Emperor, Fu Ting's heart instantly thumped. According to etiquette, since Yen Zhaoge had arrived, he would most likely ascend the Red Lotus heavenly vessel to meet the person in charge of Ingenious Flying Peak. Calculating the time, Yen Zhaoge should have already boarded the vessel. Even if Fu Ting wanted to stop him, it would already be too late. When she came near the Red Lotus sky ship, she stopped. Only after seeing Yen Zhaoge disembark from the Red Lotus heavenly vessel did he begin walking over once more. This was not because she wanted Yen Zhaoge to face Tao Yu alone. On the contrary, if Yen Zhaoge were to meet Tao Yu alone, there would still be room for negotiation, with Tao Yu able to find a way out of this embarrassing situation. Fu Ting's impression of her martial uncle was also very complicated. Of course, she also understood Tao Yu's character very well. If Fu Ting was here, Tao Yu would be stubborn to the end. Seeing Fu Ting's movements, Yen Zhaoge immediately understood, as he thought to himself, what an exquisite mind. There were some things that happened just now that I did not understand. If there is anything wrong, please forgive me, young Master Yen. Seeing him, Fu Ting first appraised him. Seeing that Yen Zhaoge did not look like he had been taken advantage of before, she heaved a sigh of relief. Yen Zhaoge smiled. It is fine. The Grand Planus Origin Lady is not someone who does not know her priorities. Fu Ting said, I saw Golden Court Mountain's senior apprentice brother Mu just now. How about young master Yen join him? That is my intention. Yen Zhaoge nodded. Fu Ting cupped her fists towards him before ascending the Red Lotus heavenly vessel. Whether or not they were on bad terms with Tao Yu, the great battle that was about to commence now was the most important matter for all those of Ingenious Flying Peak. Yen Zhaoge landed on a Red Lotus petal. Mu Jun was currently smiling at him as he raised a thumbs up. Zhaoge is indeed extraordinary. Everyone says that junior apprentice Sister Fu of Ingenious Flying Peak is the most outstanding figure of our world beyond worlds younger generation, reigning supreme over geniuses amongst geniuses as she looks down on monsters amongst monsters. Still, from what I saw today, you probably surpassed junior apprentice Sister Fu, Zhaoge. Yen Zhaoge smiled, the boundless sea of the Tao. Slowly seek it. After a moment's pause, Yen Zhaoge asked, Mr. Mu, the Western Exalt was in secluded cultivation earlier. Now that he has emerged, he is even colluding with the Southern Exalt, joining forces with him. I wonder if the Southeastern Exalt has any plans to deal with this. After all, the Western Exalt was similarly on friendly terms with the Brocade Emperor. He could forget about convincing the Brocade Emperor not to battle with the Heaven Emperor and assist the Southeastern Exalt. Conversely, however, if he were to join forces with the Southern Exalt Zhuang Xin to deal with the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia, the Brocade Emperor would not be able to forcibly suppress him. It's still hard to come to a conclusion now. The situation will only become clear after a few days. Mu Jun had chosen his words very carefully. It was not that he did not trust Yen Zhaoge. Instead, it was that Golden Court Mountain was currently in the midst of their plans, the results of which were hard to predict. Fortunately, the Heaven Emperor was currently not in the world beyond worlds, and the Brocade Emperor had coincidentally returned due to his arranged battle with Mars Halberd. As a result, the Southern Exalt Zhuang Xin temporarily dared not act rashly. The Western Exalt would not be able to gain any advantage against the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia alone. The two of them chatted while quietly waiting for the impending battle. Still, as time passed and the Brocade Emperor was still nowhere to be seen, the atmosphere inevitably turning rather solemn. Could it be that this big brother has something to do again and has stood us up at the last moment, unable to come? Yen Zhaoge could not help but wonder. On the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, Fu Ting, Tao Yu, and the other descendants of Ingenious Flying Peak were naturally the most worried. After a while, Mars Halberd, who had been waiting quietly all along, suddenly said, "Time's up." Fu Ting and Tao Yu both had bitter expressions on their faces. An old man appeared in that oval world that flickered with dim yellow light in the distance. This old man had white hair and many wrinkles on his face, as he looked rather old. However, as soon as he appeared, an aura that resembled numerous earth dragons surged into the surroundings, suffusing the entire surrounding space. This was none other than one of the world beyond worlds' 10 exalts, the Earth Exalt who presided over the central June Heaven territory. While he looked unassuming, his strength surpassed that of the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia and the Southern Exalt Zhuang Xin. He was a personal disciple of the earthly sovereign. In terms of seniority and age, he was one of the few people in the entire world beyond worlds. It was just that he was unable to display any of this as he faced Mars Halberd now. Gazing into the distance, Mu Jun sighed softly. An emperor is indeed extraordinary. This is only natural. Otherwise, how could he be called a leakless true immortal? Yen Zhaoge's expression was calm. Martial practitioners pushed open the door to immortality and ascended to the immortal realm, no longer being able to be reached by the human realm. After having passed the immortal mortal tribulation, their entire bodies would be flawless and leakless. Therefore, they were also known as leakless true immortals. Leakless actually meant that the things of the human realm would no longer be able to harm them. It was precisely because the human realm would no longer be able to harm them that they were known as immortals. Human exalts were human immortals. Still, they had yet to truly surpass that barrier between humans and immortals at the end of the day. A situation like Long Xueji's was an extremely rare one. Most of the time, an emperor would easily sweep through the combined might of multiple human exalts. Chapter 934. The Earth Exalt, who looked old, cupped his hands towards Mars Halberd. Please wait a moment. The Brocade Emperor will definitely not miss the appointment. He has hurried back from extra-dimensional space at the last moment. Therefore, the timing might be a little erratic. The face of the flame giant that Mars Halberd had transformed into was concealed by flames, as his expression could not be clearly seen. However, he turned his head and looked at the Earth's sovereign. Wang Zhengcheng, there's no need for you to say anything. The date was set by you guys, and if Fu Yanqi misses it, he will be the one to be embarrassed. However, I will not let this matter rest. With the passing of time, many things are indeed different from back then. Still, as I have gradually come to understand the current world beyond worlds these days, I have many more questions that I would like to ask you about. Hearing his words, Yan Zhaoge looked at Mu Jun beside him. Mu Jun, sent via sound transmission. Wang Zhengcheng is the name of the Earth Exalt. The Earth Exalt was a personal disciple of the earthly sovereign who had been famous for many years. In terms of seniority, the earthly sovereign had been of the same generation as the Brocade Emperor's Grand Master, Daoist Xuanzhong. The Earth Exalt was of the same generation as the Brocade Emperor's master, as the Brocade Emperor Fu Yanqi was even his junior. Still, they were not of the same lineage at the end of the day. Therefore, seniority was usually different. Even if they were related, many rules did not apply to emperors. Still, the Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng was indeed much older than the Brocade Emperor. Long before the Brocade Emperor had made his debut, Wang Zhengcheng had already been famous for over 10,000 years. While it seemed like the Brocade Emperor and many others of the younger generation had surpassed him, there was a special reason for that. Speaking of which, Wang Zhengcheng's situation was similar to that of Yuan Zhengfeng back in the Eight Extremities world. Many years ago, he had been gravely injured to the core as he had remained in the 10th level of the Martial Saint realm. After passing the immortal mortal tribulation, he would ascend to the immortal realm. If he failed, he would perish. He had been injured as a human exalt, his situation much more severe than Yuan Zhengfeng's, as even the heaven-returning divine pill could not cure him. Even the earthly sovereign was unable to solve the problem of his own disciple. Still, as the oldest human exalt of the world beyond worlds, Wang Zhengcheng's cultivation base had already reached the transformative stage, as his strength surpassed that of Chao Jia, Zhuangshen, and Lu Zhenggu. As long as he was willing, he would virtually be able to suppress all disputes between the martial saints of the world by himself. Even if it was Chao Jia and Zhuangshen from before the current 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and exalts of 10 territories had been established in the world beyond worlds, when the earthly sovereign was still the exalted earth luminary, Wang Zhengcheng had already followed him around the world. Therefore, he and Mars Halberd were old acquaintances. Looking at Mars Halberd, Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng sighed and said, "Although my master is not here, His Majesty Concealed Sovereign is in Kunlun Mountain. Although he is in closed-door training, I believe that His Majesty Concealed Sovereign will come out to meet you if you visit." Mars Halberd said lightly, "No matter the result of today's battle, if I survive, I will go to Kunlun Mountain. If Fu Yanqi doesn't show up, I'll have to make a trip there." Wang Zhengcheng fell silent. The void fell into silence. Along with the passage of time, the atmosphere at the scene became even more anxious. Some of the people who came a little late, afraid that they would miss this unparalleled battle, found that the battle had yet to begin. Everyone who had rushed over to watch the battle looked at each other. Although there were no noisy discussions, they were all whispering to each other through voice transmissions. They still dared not openly discuss the Brocade Emperor, who had yet to arrive. Still, thinking of how the Brocade Emperor had not appeared even after a long time had passed since Mars Halberd had destroyed the minor no-hatred Dao arena, Everyone present stole glances at the red lotus heavenly vessel, their gazes growing increasingly doubtful. Now, however, that divinity of flame, who resembled the center of the universe, suddenly moved. He who had originally been seated in the meditative position on the massive fire dragon now stood up. Everyone had thought that Mars Halberd had grown impatient from waiting. Still, that flame giant did not move as he instead swiveled his head and gazed into the distance. The next moment, streams of purple chi suddenly surged there, instantly suffusing space. While not much of a powerful aura emanated, everyone present felt the same thing. There seemed to simultaneously be two centers amidst the space of the universe before them. One was that towering divinity of flame. Meanwhile, the other was located amidst that dense purple chi. On the red lotus heavenly vessel, the expressions of Fu Ting and Tao Yu instantly relaxed as they were no longer anxious in the least. The spirits of those who were watching the battle rose as well. While there was only dense purple chi before them with no trace of a person to be seen, everyone knew that the Brocade Emperor had arrived. "I have kept you waiting." A low, clear voice resounded from amidst the purple chi. As the purple chi dispersed, a figure was indistinctly visible amidst it. Gazing into the distance, Yen Zhaoge saw a middle-aged man who appeared to be in his 40s from the outside. He was dressed in snowy white clothes with a red robe on the outside. His long hair was not tied up, as it was instead draped directly behind his back. His appearance was truly admirable. His features could be said to be perfect, yet did not seem feminine in the least, as they were clearly defined and valiant. There seemed to be countless rich emotions surging in his eyes. At every instant, a different aura seemed to emanate from him, sometimes gentle and refined, sometimes valiant and resolute, sometimes melancholic and deep. Amidst the unceasing changes, there was no sense of incongruity at all, as it instead formed a unique attraction, causing those features which could already be said to be perfect in the first place to appear even more charming. It was a charm which caused the opposite sex to be infatuated with him, and those of the same sex to sigh in admiration, yet find it hard to feel jealous of him. Yen Zhaoge smacked his lips. The number one handsome man in the history of the world beyond worlds really lives up to his reputation. While he had previously seen an image of the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi and had sighed in admiration at it, Yen Zhaoge felt that seeing him in person, his flair was even greater. Looking at that figure amidst the dense purple chi, Mars Halberd said calmly, "Since you have come, let us begin." While his opponent had destroyed his manner, no anger could be seen on the Brocade Emperor's face. "Please, Senior." The Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng retreated. While this was a witness, there was no need for him to say anything now. At this moment, in this place, everything belonged to these two Emperor-level experts. Unexpectedly, the first to act was shockingly the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi. He raised his palm, the qis combining yin and yang. Beneath the Brocade Emperor's palm, the entire region of space before him directly collapsed, time blurry and space no longer existing, as all things were reduced to the primordial qis of yin and yang. Yin and yang circulated, forming a massive Taiji diagram, which struck down towards Mars Halberd's head. Where the Taiji diagram passed, all things reverted to yin and yang, no longer existing. As the Taiji diagram circulated, it formed a crushing momentum which swept through all things, reducing them to nothingness beneath the Brocade Emperor's palm. The further he advanced, the stronger the Taiji diagram became, its strength seemingly limitless. The Brocade Emperor had always been that carefree and unfettered image of him roaming freely beneath the heavens and the earth. It was his carefree style of passing through countless flowers and countless beauties. Still, the number of people this emperor had killed far surpassed the number of beauties he had experienced. Chapter 935. As the same Taiji Yin-Yang palm was executed by the Brocade Emperor, it was a completely different scene. With a single palm strike, the universe before Shao Chun reverted to Yin and Yang Qi, no longer looking like it did before. Watching the Brocade Emperor from the sidelines, Yin Zhaoge could feel that he had made new gains in analyzing the Taiji Yin-Yang palm. Still, while the Brocade Emperor's attacks were extraordinary, his opponents were similarly not easy to deal with. Facing the Brocade Emperor's Taiji Yin-Yang palm, that divinity of flame who stood amidst space directly punched out. Under the influence of his power, the originally balanced Yin and Yang Qi suddenly lost their balance. The Yang Qi became extremely vigorous while the Yin Qi weakened. The originally magnificent Tai Chi diagram began to tear apart and then burst into flames. Seeing this scene, Yin Zhaoge understood in his heart, the Taiji Yin-Yang palm can guide Yang and change Yin, but the essence of fire contained in this attack of Mars' halberd is too strong. The Tai Chi Yin-Yang palm was exquisite, but Mars' halberd was an immortal weapon, so it was sharper and more vicious. Both sides collided head-on, just like a scholar meeting a soldier. The Tai Chi Yin-Yang palm also activated a boundless power. If the power was strong enough, the fire essence Qi would still be turned into Yin and Yang Qi and would not be able to break the Tai Chi diagram. Still, the Brocade Emperor did not hold the upper hand against Mars' halberd in a head-on clash. As the personal weapon of Exalted Fire Luminary, one of the 9 luminaries of Kunlun, Mars' halberd had existed in this world for thousands of years. Although he had been injured and sealed back then, during the time he had been sealed, his injuries had already been healed, and he had even been constantly nourishing himself. Now Mars' halberd was stronger than before he was injured. His situation was special. He could unleash his full power, which was equivalent to a great emperor, a leakless true immortal who had rampaged through the world beyond worlds thousands of years ago. What Mars' halberd possessed was not just pure strength. He combined his own strength and had his own unique martial arts. While it seemed straightforward, it actually similarly contained subtle variations within, as the Brocade Emperor did not have the upper hand. The brutal flames rapidly exploded, incinerating the Taiji diagram as they even swept towards the Brocade Emperor himself. The Brocade Emperor Fu Yinqi was not surprised. He had already guessed it himself and had been reminded by the Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng. On the one hand, Mars' halberd's martial arts originated from the supreme skill of Exalted Fire Luminary. On the other hand, it originated from the powerful demon soul-sealed in this immortal weapon. The combination of the two had condensed a martial art unique to Mars' halberd. Even he of the grand, clear, direct lineage could not underestimate it. Mars' halberd, who had followed the Exalted Fire Luminary to conquer the universe in the past, might even surpass him in terms of personal accumulation and experience. Looking at the flames sweeping over towards him, the Brocade Emperor neither evaded nor evaded. White-colored clouds suddenly appeared on his body, instantly covering the void. Wherever the white cloud passed, the flames were all extinguished. Great simplicity, refinement, limitless true body. The white cloud suppressed the flames, and the fire element energy was quickly reduced to pure yang energy. The Yang Qi was born, and the Yin Qi reappeared, growing stronger and stronger. As they conversed, they instantly returned to the balance of Yin and Yang. The Taiji diagram also reappeared. The Brocade Emperor used the Taiji Yin-Yang palm with one hand and the grand plainness immeasurable body with the other, one attacking and one defending, complementing each other as he instantly dispelled Mars' halberd's attack, wanting to regain the initiative as he turned defense into offense. The flame giant snorted coldly amid space, his figure exploding as it transformed into all-encompassing flowing fire. A crimson halberd appeared amidst the infinite sea of flames, shooting straight, towards the Brocade Emperor. The halberd slashed through space, the Taiji diagram instantly breaking apart. With a second strike, those streams of white cloud chi were hacked apart as well. Mars' halberd was not an ornament, nor was it a defensive tool or any other commonly seen item. This was a great halberd. It was an out-and-out weapon, a lethal weapon. It had been created for a single purpose, and that was to slaughter. Like a fire dragon soaring through the cosmos, Mars' halberd rampaged amidst space as even the Brocade Emperor, who executed a peak defensive martial art of Taoism, the grand planus immeasurable body, was unable to withstand its sharpness. A crescent blade at one end of the twin crescent halberd chopped directly before the Brocade Emperor, fiery light illuminating the Brocade Emperor's handsome features, as they were dyed entirely red. The Brocade Emperor's expression was calm as his figure suddenly seemed to turn transparent, tangible yet intangible. In the crowd's perception, the martial monarch seemed to have suddenly ceased to exist. Mars' halberd's attack instantly missed. Grand beginning bright emptiness form. Yen Zhaoge's eyes lit up. It was precisely the grand beginning bright emptiness form of the grand cosmos 5 manifestations. The Brocade Emperor simultaneously executed the grand beginning bright emptiness form and the grand plainness immeasurable body, his figure circulating alternately between the emptiness and the white cloud chi. Mars' halberd's attacks seemed to always be just a hair's breadth away from his body. This was naturally not Mars' halberd showing mercy. Instead, it was the result of the Brocade Emperor simultaneously executing 2 supreme martial arts of the grand clear direct lineage, the grand beginning bright emptiness form and the grand plainness immeasurable body combined, possessing defensive power comparable to that of the 5 virtues. Just this alone made Fu Yunqi one of the peak experts amongst leakless true immortals and emperors in terms of defensive power, as few could hope to match him. Executing these 2 supreme martial arts together, the Brocade Emperor regained his footing. This time, he no longer executed the Taiji yin-yang palm as he instead slowly raised a finger, tapping towards Mars' halberd. The dense purple chi that had accompanied him earlier was suddenly retracted at this moment, becoming formless and intangible as it was hard to estimate and measure. The universe suddenly shook. It was not just the sea of stars where they battled that shook as it spread unceasingly into the distance. Amidst the darkness of space, patterns of light suddenly filled the air. While those patterns of light were not bright, they contained infinite profundities and principles. The Brocade Emperor raised a hand, his movements light and slow as he seemed nonchalant. Amongst the spectators, even Guan Yulua, who was a martial grandmaster, was able to clearly see this. Yet as his finger tapped out, it ignored space, time, and even the dense sea of flames as it directly arrived near Mars' halberd, seemingly about to tap onto the shaft of that crimson halberd. The spectators were able to clearly see the entire process of the Brocade Emperor tapping out with this finger. Yet most of them had blank looks on their faces, as they were completely unable to comprehend the concept within it all. There was only an extremely small number of people whose eyes lit up with an unprecedented glow. Grand commencement divine finger. Yen Zhaoge's pupils dilated slightly as he focused all his attention on the battle before him. He was one of those extremely few people who could recognize the martial art that the Brocade Emperor was currently executing. The grand commencement divine finger of the grand cosmos 5 manifestations. Also known as the grand supreme earlier heaven divine finger, it contained the formless and intangible concept of grand commencement, as it manifested the earlier heaven chi of before the heavens and the earth had been created, being incomparably profound. As the Brocade Emperor tapped out with this finger, even Mars' halberd shook slightly. Good. A loud roar resounded as Mars' halberd, who had only been on the offensive since the start of the battle, retracted his stance for the first time. He flicked his pole, striking the brocade emperor's finger as both sides shook. Yet, Mars' halberd abruptly spun, brandishing his blade as he hacked towards the brocade emperor once more. This time, the flames were retracted completely. There was only infinite sharpness that hacked towards the enemy, with the momentum of splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. Chapter 936. The boundless, rampaging sea of flames that had originally suffused the cosmos completely vanished at this moment. There was only that great crimson halberd that swept along infinite sharpness, transforming into a bright light as it hacked towards the brocade emperor. That light was dazzling, and dazzling as where it passed. The dim space around the brocade emperor's body was completely broken apart. Formless and intangible grand commencement, soundlessly transformed into grand beginning that was tangible and intangible. Grand beginning that was tangible and intangible transformed into the original grand plainness that was tangible and intangible. Following this, grand plainness automatically divided, transforming into the taiji of yin and yang. The next moment, taiji circulated, yin and yang changing as the 4 phenomena and 8 trigrams were born. A new heavens and earth was about to be established. It was just that with this, the supreme martial arts of the brocade emperor's grand cosmos 5 manifestations actually vaguely showed signs of being broken by someone gazing over. Yen Zhaoge saw that the surface of that crimson twin crescent halberd was currently dim and hazy. Graceful streams of qi intermingled, vaguely condensing into an illusory figure. Enveloped by that illusory figure, the Mars halberd seemed to have transformed into an object that resembled a banner, whilst also an axe. Heaven-splitting banner. Yen Zhaoge muttered to himself. The 3rd scripture of the primordial heavenly scripture, one of the earlier heaven 3 scriptures, the heaven-opening scripture. Seeing this scene from the yellow earthen world, the earth exalt Wang Zhengcheng had a rather subtle expression on his face. The 10 primordial heavenly scriptures of the jade, clear, direct lineage. Besides the peerless heavenly scripture, the other 9 scriptures were known as the earlier heaven 3 scriptures and the later heaven 6 scriptures. The later heaven 6 scriptures elaborated on the various creation techniques after the heavens had been opened, as there was no order between them. Meanwhile, the earlier heaven 3 scriptures that followed closely after the peerless heavenly scripture had a fixed order. The 2nd scripture of the primordial heavenly scripture, the primordial heavenly scripture, symbolized the creation of all things from nothingness, the very first one. The 3rd scripture of the primordial heavenly scripture, the heaven-opening scripture, represented the birth of the great Tao, the opening of creation from one to many. The 4th scripture of the primordial heavenly scripture, the cyclic heavenly scripture, stood between earlier heaven and later heaven, establishing the changes of the 2 extremities as the foundation of the various principles of the world after the heavens and the earth had been opened. Amongst the founders of the 3 clear lineages, the Lord of primordial, heavenly signified creation from nothingness, the primordial world division, splitting the heavens and splitting the earth, stabilizing the earth, water, fire, and wind, and creating the great might of the primordial world's creation was vividly displayed by the heaven-opening book. Among the martial practitioners who cultivated the primordial heavenly scriptures, Xiantian 3 scriptures, those who cultivated the heaven-opening scripture possessed the strongest frontal combat ability. Even though the origin heavenly scripture was ranked before the heaven-splitting scripture and possessed boundless mysteries, it was still unable to withstand the might of the heaven-splitting scripture that could cleave apart everything in its path. At this moment, Mars' halberd's attack had integrated part of the concept of the heaven-opening book. The jade clear lineage's earlier heaven 3 scriptures shared some similarities with the grand clear lineage's earlier heaven supreme martial arts. To a certain extent, The heaven-opening scripture countered the grand cosmos' 5 manifestations of the grand clear lineage. The situation was somewhat similar to how Yen Zhaoge had previously countered the aeon-light heavenly scripture with the immortal trapping sword. Even the head of the 5 ties, the Tai fist, would be at a disadvantage against the heaven-opening book alone. The other 4 ultimate arts would be restrained by the heaven-opening book and lose their power. Only when the grand celestial 5 grand essences were gathered and circulated together would they be able to withstand the might of splitting open the heavens. Therefore, now that Mars Halberd was going all out, of all the Brocade Emperor's martial arts, only the profound and hard-to-parry grand commencement divine finger was still barely able to be maintained. The grand beginning bright emptiness body and the grand plainness immeasurable body that had been immovable and unshakable before were about to crumble. Seeing the scene before him, the earth exalt Wang Zhengcheng could not help but sigh. Following the great calamity that year, the universe had shattered and Taoism had withered. The Kunlun 9 luminaries had congregated, viewing the heaven-opening scripture together and combining it with their original martial arts. Each of them had gained something. For example, the exalted gold luminary had researched the sword Tao and created the jade illusory heaven-opening sword. The exalted solar luminary had combined the yin-yang heavenly scripture and perfected the extreme yang scripture, comprehending the extreme yang world creation scripture, and so on. Wang Jingqing's master, the exalted earth luminary, the current earthly sovereign, had also possessed the yin-yang earth-heaven opening art. The Kunlun 9 luminaries had joined hands to establish the world beyond worlds, finally witnessing the rebirth of Taoism. Mars Halberd's martial arts had been combined with the martial will of the exalted fire luminary. Beneath his halberd at this moment, it was like he wanted to break through the scenes of earlier heaven, separating the primordial chaos and resetting the earth, water, fire, and wind, opening the heavens and earth once more. The blurry darkness was completely parted by the bright radiance before boundless blazing fire reappeared once more. These flames had been created by Mars Halberd after he had hacked through the scenes of earlier heaven manifested of the Brocade Emperor's true essence before transforming them into blazing fire, which had then attacked the Brocade Emperor himself. With the creation of the heavens and the earth, this was the initial fire that existed between earlier heaven and later heaven as it nurtured infinite life force. Yet, as Mars Halberd hacked down, boundless brutal killing intent surged as infinite life force was instantly transformed into infinite destructive power. The violent sea of flames swept the surrounding area at this moment. The spectators all retreated. If they hesitated in the slightest, they would all perish amidst this blazing fire. Gazing at Mars Halberd, the Brocade Emperor did not appear flustered, as he instead let out a long sigh. He executed another grand commencement divine finger, causing the approaching flames to pause slightly. He simply retracted the grand plainness immeasurable body, only executing the grand beginning bright emptiness form. Before the grand beginning bright emptiness form was broken through by Mars Halberd, the Brocade Emperor's figure swiftly retreated. Beneath the effects of the grand beginning bright emptiness form, the distance between them seemed to be completely grasped by the Brocade Emperor as the distance between them rapidly increased. Yet Mars Halberd flickered amidst space, having already dispelled the grand commencement divine finger as he immediately chased after him, arriving before the Brocade Emperor once more as he was unable to exert the profundities of the grand beginning bright emptiness form. Old Ginger is still spicier. Beside Yen Zhaoge, Mu Jun sighed. Yen Zhaoge smacked his lips. The Lord of Tao and virtue exists between existence and non-existence, being the enaction of the great Tao as well as the manifestation of creation. Of the supreme martial arts recorded in the Daedejing, there are earlier heaven's supreme martial arts as well as later heaven's supreme martial arts. If the Brocade Emperor is not proficient in the Tai Fist of the Grand Cosmos 5 manifestations, if he possesses the later Heaven Supreme martial arts of the Grand Clear Direct lineage, earlier heaven and later heaven merging as one, he would not be countered by the heaven opening scripture. Mu Jun nodded. His Golden Court Mountains lineage originated from the legacy of the Purple Tenuity Emperor, as it originated from the later heaven supreme martial arts recorded in the Daedejing. Unlike the 10 primordial heavenly scriptures of the Jade Clear Direct lineage, the earlier Heaven 3 scriptures were superior to the later Heaven 6 scriptures. The Daedejing of the Grand Clear Direct lineage was the embodiment of nothingness, as well as the manifestation of all phenomena, as it was not inferior to earlier Heaven Supreme martial arts. It was just that while Golden Court Mountain was on friendly terms with ingenious Flying Peak, and the Brocade Emperor was on good terms with the Southeastern Exalt, they were still two different legacies at the end of the day. Still, even as he nodded in agreement with Yan Zhaoga's point of view, Mu Jun could not help but feel rather puzzled. This really exceeds my predictions once more. Zhaoga, you actually understand the direct lineage of the Grand Clear lineage so well? Yan Zhaoga's expression did not change. By chance, I obtained an incomplete version of the Taiji Yin Yang Palm. While it is not of the same lineage as the Brocade Emperor's ingenious Flying Peak, it is indeed of the direct lineage of the Grand Clear lineage as well. Mu Jun understood. Oh, Junior Apprentice Sister Fu, and those of ingenious Flying Peak did mention it before. Still, never would I have thought that not only are you proficient in the Taiji Yin Yang Palm, you even have such a deep understanding of the Daedejing. He no longer pondered on this as he gazed at the two true immortal experts who were gradually getting further and further away from them amidst the darkness of space. Still, if Mars Halberd does not possess an overwhelming advantage, I would still favor the Brocade Emperor. Mu Jun's expression was rather strange. After all, the Brocade Emperor himself possesses an immortal artifact. Chapter 937. Yan Zhaoga had long since learnt from Golden Court mountain martial practitioners that the Brocade Emperor possessed an immortal artifact. Unlike the dim, radiant Emperor Yin Tianxia, who had died young back then, the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi had already ascended to the immortal realm over 1,000 years ago. Yan Zhaoga and Mu Jun exchanged glances, both having rather strange expressions on their faces. Mars Halberd was too special, although in the eyes of this immortal armament, it was still a weapon. Still, everyone else, Yan Zhaoga and Mu Jun included, were used to seeing him as an emperor. Perhaps only at this moment did everyone realize that Mars Halberd was indeed a weapon. He couldn't refine other immortal weapons, nor could he use other immortal weapons. Putting aside the fact that he didn't have one, even if someone were to give him an immortal artifact, he would only be able to stare at it. The problem, however, was that his opponent, the Brocade Emperor, was not unarmed. There was also no rule stating that the Brocade Emperor had to fight Mars Halberd empty-handed. Mars Halberd himself was not that naive either, as expected, as the two of them gradually disappeared into the distance. A powerful aura burst out in the next instant. Even with the eyesight of Yan Zhaoga and the others, they were already unable to clearly see the scene of the two experts clashing. However, an unprecedentedly intense collision erupted in the distance. The violent shock waves surged far away and scattered in all directions like a tide. The red lotus heavenly vessel that Yan Zhaoga and the others were on shook intensely as they were directly jolted into retreat. On the other side, the earthen yellow world formed from the earth Exalt Wang Jingqing's true essence was still stable and unmoving. However, the size of the egg-like world had shrunk significantly, and its power had become more condensed. Only then was it able to withstand the shock waves from the battle between the two great emperors. Near the Red Lotus heavenly ship, the scarlet light that had turned into a giant red lotus also retracted at this moment. Yen Zhaoge and the others who had originally been on the flower petals now scattered in all directions, their figures flying backwards together. It's a pity that I can't watch any longer. Yen Zhaoge stroked his lower chin, somewhat regretfully, an expression of deep agreement appearing on the face of Mu Jun by the side. The Brocade Emperor wielded his immortal artifact in battle against Mars' halberd. Still, even Yen Zhaoge and the others were unable to ascertain the exact outcome of the battle. Still, Yen Zhaoge had already benefited greatly from this battle up to this point. Right now, he was more concerned about the outcome of the battle because of how the situation would develop in the future. Yen Zhaoge naturally hoped that the Brocade Emperor could emerge victorious. This had nothing to do with Mars Halberd tricking him into going to the immortal court. On the contrary, Yen Zhaoge was happy to learn about the existence of the immortal court, even though the process was a little dangerous. He swiveled his head to look at Mu Jun. After this battle, I wonder if I can pay a visit to your master, the Southeastern Exalt? Mu Jun replied, Unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't. My master is out. Ah, Yen Zhaoge was taken aback. This was something that he had not been aware of when conversing with the chief of the Central June Heaven Territory's Jade Mountain sect, Lu Xiangtong. Mu Jun explained, just recently, not long before the day of the Brocade Emperor's battle with Mars Halberd, the Earth Exalt returned from extra-dimensional space, inviting my master to the Central June Heaven Territory. It seems that something major has happened. Not only my master. It is said that the other supreme beings have also been invited. Yen Zhaoge narrowed his eyes into slits. This means that the exalts of the 10 territories have all gathered in the Central June Heaven Territory. When he had heard Lu Xiangtong mention that the Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng and the Brocade Emperor had left the world beyond worlds together after deciding on the date of their battle, Yen Zhaoge had actually already been rather concerned about this. Unlike the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors who frequently ventured into extra-dimensional space, the 10 exalts had always remained in the world beyond worlds, seldom leaving. The only exception was the upper exalt whose movements were hard to pinpoint. The Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng was virtually equivalent to the Lord of the Central June Heaven Territory, as he sat over it all year round. The daily affairs of the Central June Heaven Territory were mostly handled by Wang Zhengcheng as well. As a personal disciple of the earthly sovereign and the most active existence amongst the descendants of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, Yen Zhaoge felt that this Earth Exalt was like the steward of Kunlun Mountain. In truth, when the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were either in secluded cultivation or away, Wang Zhengcheng had managed the Central June Heaven Territory and even the world beyond worlds in an orderly manner. It was definitely not normal for such a person to suddenly leave the world beyond worlds. Now, it was not just Wang Zhengcheng. Chao Jia, Zhuangshen, Lu Zhenggu, and the others had also left their respective territories, congregating in the Central June Heaven Territory. Yen Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. Mr. Mu, may I ask if something like this has ever happened before? It has, Mu Jun answered, around 100 years ago. A pondering look appeared on his face, as he was clearly concerned about this as well. Yen Zhaoge raised his head slightly, thinking, is it related to the immortal court and Buddhism? According to the words of those of the lofty towering world, the battle between the two has been getting more and more intense recently. From the looks of it, there should be a peak in the battle between the two sides every 100 years. Yen Zhaoge narrowed his eyes. Their longevity should be slightly longer than that of mortals. Generally speaking, the longest lifespan of mortals is only around 100 years old. He had previously guessed that the peak experts of the world beyond worlds like the Brocade Emperor and the Primordial Heaven Emperor had all headed to extra-dimensional space because of the battle between the immortal court and Buddhism. While there was still no concrete evidence now, Yen Zhaoge was even more certain of his earlier guess. It was just that he did not know what the situation would be like after the 10 exalts had congregated in the central June heaven territory. Would they remain in the world beyond worlds, or would they head to extra-dimensional space as well? Kunlun Mountain still had the concealed sovereign and the female emperor, at least. Overall, the situation in the world beyond worlds was still stable. Still, when it came to the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, the southern blazing heaven territory, and the eastern vast heaven territory, there would definitely be some disturbances without the presence of exalts. Without the great mountain overhead, the various hegemons would naturally have more space to exert their might. The Royal Reed Sea, where Broad Creed Mountain was located, would not have too many disturbances. In the past, ferocious dragons might have crossed the river. The Grand Xian dynasty had entered the territory of the Royal Reed Sea roughly 100 years ago. Still, in the earlier battle at Broad Creed Mountain, the star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide, a late immortal bridge martial saint, had left many in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory shocked. While many believed that it was due to the might of an immortal artifact, whatever the case, Guan Lide of the 9th level of the martial saint realm had truly fallen here. As a result, most people felt uneasy as they dared not act rashly. While there were definitely others who coveted the immortal artifact, they dared not blindly invade it. As for those outside the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, it would not be so easy for them to cross the border. While the southeastern exalt was not present, the martial practitioners of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory would still naturally reject outsiders. It was just that Yen Zhaoge felt that it was a pity. He had originally wanted to make use of this chance to visit the southeastern exalt Chao Jie and inquire about his mother. Anyway, in Chao Jie's eyes, Yen Zhaoge, who had already made a trip to the immortal court, could already give up on himself. A pity, truly a pity. Yen Zhaoge had a regretful look on his face. Chapter 938. While the Brocade Emperor and the Earth Exalt were both in the know, Yen Zhaoge did not feel that it was a good idea to ask them about it. The Earth Exalt did not need to be mentioned. While the Brocade Emperor currently appeared friendly, it was still uncertain what his opinion was regarding Xue Chuqing. From the looks of it now, he could only wait patiently. Still, everything had its pros and cons. The existence of the dim radiant wheel was likely to draw the attention of the immortal court. When he had slain the vast Yang Exalt of the immortal court's lineage, Pei Hua, when he had seen the dim radiant wheel, his emotions had been rather abnormal. Most of it had naturally been hatred and fury. The number one expert of his vast Yang palace, and also their only emperor, had been slain by the dim radiant emperor in Tianxia. Pei Hua's hatred was understandable. Still, Yen Zhaoge acutely sensed that Pei Hua seemed to be feeling other than hatred. Yen Zhaoge felt that it might not be a problem with Pei Hua himself. Instead, it was the attitude of the entire immortal court. The news of him possessing the dim radiant wheel was currently only circulating in the world beyond worlds. If this news spread to the immortal court, there might be some changes. Still, that should only happen after the great battle between the immortal court and Buddhism had calmed down and was no longer as intense. Before that, their attention should still be placed on Buddhism, vying for incense and territory with them. Yen Zhaoge pondered as he continued retreating. In the distance, the two emperor-level experts were already completely enraged as they no longer cared about their surroundings. Streaks of white cloud chi and streaks of crimson fiery light intertwined, sweeping through this region of space. Both sides moved as they fought, gradually leaving the original battlefield as they traversed an even larger region of extra-dimensional space. The great battle did not cease. Gradually, those terrifying aftershocks weakened. This was not because the two were exhausted. Instead, they were getting further and further away from Yen Zhaoge and the other spectators. Yen Zhaoge and the others did not attempt to follow them. At this point, with the two true immortals exerting their full strength, they were no longer spectators. Of everyone present, only the Earth Exalt Wang Zhengcheng had the ability to continue spectating. He was also the only one who had left his original position and followed them. As the judge of this battle, this was only natural. Meanwhile, Yan Zhaoge and the others, including Fu Ting, Tao Yu, and the other ingenious Flying Peak martial practitioners on the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, had already finished spectating the battle. They only had to wait patiently for the results. The wait didn't take too long. After a short while, a dazzling red light suddenly streaked across the dark void in the distance, as if it had split the void apart. The red light disappeared in the blink of an eye. The heat in the void gradually subsided, and the previous cold and lonely state was restored. Everyone exchanged glances. The battle between the great monarchs seemed to have come to an end. The Brocade Emperor had won, not mentioning Yan Zhaoge. Mu Jun by the side first let out a sigh of relief. According to what the two sides had said in the previous battle, the Brocade Emperor was the representative of the Grand Clear Direct lineage, ending the enmity between him and Mars Halberd over the Grand Clear martial practitioners helping the dragon race to seal him that year. Before the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunxi had been defeated, Mars Halberd would not find trouble with the other direct lineages of the Grand Clear lineage. In the current world beyond worlds, besides ingenious Flying Peak, only Golden Court Mountain remained of the orthodox Grand Clear direct lineage. In truth, the situation this time was unique. In order to prepare for battle, if the Brocade Emperor was willing, the southeastern Exalt Chao Jia was likely to provide the heavenly cycle righteous art and the three enclosures Emperor's sword for his reference. Still, the Brocade Emperor, who was accompanied by an immortal artifact, clearly had his own confidence and pride, as he had ultimately still been able to take on this battle all by himself. The final outcome of the battle seemed to prove this point as well. From the looks of it, that Mars Halberd seems to be a man of his word. There shouldn't be any problems with this outcome, right? Yan Zhaoge sighed in relief as well. After a long time, purple chi reappeared. Vast purple chi rose from the east, enveloping the space of the universe before them once more. The world beyond worlds martial practitioners present all cheered in unison. While Mars Halberd had some connection with the world beyond worlds, he was already a legend of history, as he had only suddenly reappeared recently. The Brocade Emperor had been one of the peak sovereigns of the world beyond worlds in the past millennia, as he possessed great prestige. Even if the spectators had no stake in this battle, they were still more inclined towards the Brocade Emperor. Yan Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. It looks like Mars Halberd was defeated. The Brocade Emperor was unable to destroy or subdue him. For some reason, Mars Halberd hates the dragon race to the bone. While there is enmity between him and us of the Grand Clear Direct lineage, it is not a death enmity. Mu Jun said, he is not the Brocade Emperor's match. He might not fight to the death. With his strength, it would still be very difficult for him to stay if he wanted to leave. As Mu Jun said this, he smiled at Yan Zhaoge. Moreover, Mars Halberd was the accompanying weapon of the exalted fire luminary at the end of the day. If not for death enmity, the Brocade Emperor would not have fought to the death with him. As for subduing this immortal artifact, this is certainly a tempting thought. Still, first, not mentioning that he is different from other immortal artifacts, just the exalted fire luminary alone is enough to make one feel apprehensive. It is rumored that this bigwig has yet to perish. If he does not speak, everyone would have to take things a little more lightly. Mu Jun extended a finger, tapping Yan Zhaoge lightly. It is fine that your broad Creed Mountain possesses the extreme Yang seal and the extreme Yin crown. While they are extremely powerful high-grade sacred artifacts, they are not immortal artifacts at the end of the day. However, the situation with Mars Halberd is different. As the two spoke, that vast purple chi that enveloped space entered the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, vanishing. The spectators all approached the Red Lotus heavenly vessel, preparing to offer their congratulations. Still, while they were allowed to board the vessel, the Brocade Emperor did not meet them, as he was instead received by the Grand Planus Origin Lady Tao Yu. The hearts of Zheng Emo, Mu Jun, Lu Xiangtong, and the others all jolted slightly. While the Brocade Emperor had emerged victorious in his battle with Mars Halberd, could it be that he had been heavily injured as well, thus not receiving any guests? Of course, with the Brocade Emperor having been injured, Mars Halberd's injuries would only have been worse. Seeing only Tao Yu and not Fu Ting, Yan Zhaoge had other guesses. He and Fu Ting had inadvertently gone to the lands of the immortal court together. This must have been a taboo in the hearts of the higher echelon experts of the world beyond worlds. After learning of the existence of the immeasurable heavenly lord and the immortal court, while Fu Ting could not explain it clearly, she had always had a strange feeling about it. Yan Zhaoge believed that it was not just her imagination or her misconception. Referring to the similar warnings of the Brocade Emperor, the Southeastern Exalt, and the Northeastern Exalt, Yan Zhaoge guessed that Fu Ting's feeling was not wrong. Having gotten his daughter at such an old age, yet having such a thing happen, the Brocade Emperor would naturally be nervous. Yan Zhaoge even thought that since the Brocade Emperor had not seen Fu Ting previously, having immediately clashed with Mars Halberd after arriving at the battlefield, he had only learned of Fu Ting's experiences after the battle. If he had known of this before the battle, perhaps today's battle might have turned into a battle to the death. Chapter 939. While he knew that Yan Zhaoge and Fu Ting had traveled together to the territory of the Immortal Court, the Brocade Emperor did not summon him this time. After the battle, Yan Zhaoge returned to the southeastern Yang Heaven territory of the world beyond worlds along with Mu Jun and the others. The Brocade Emperor had previously invited father and son to be his guests, but he had stood them up due to his own reasons. Now, the Brocade Emperor seemed to have no intention of meeting them. Fu Ting had specifically dispatched fellow disciples of Ingenious Flying Peak over to apologize. The Brocade Emperor had not been injured in the final battle. He had indeed had no intention of fighting to the death with Mars Halberd then. Therefore, after Mars Halberd had retreated in defeat, the battle between the two sides had come to an end. The Brocade Emperor did not linger in the world beyond worlds for long, as he quickly left, heading to foreign dimension. While he had not said it explicitly, this indirectly verified Yan Zhaoge's guess. The Brocade Emperor had indeed stayed for a short while after the battle because of Fu Ting. Fu Ting herself was currently in secluded cultivation at Ingenious Flying Peak's Red Lotus Cliff. Because she had sent someone with the message, Fu Ting had not explained her current situation in detail. Yan Zhaoge could not be sure if the Brocade Emperor had resolved the aftereffects of his daughter heading to the Immortal Court. From the looks of it, it did not seem optimistic. If it could be easily resolved, Chao Jia, Lu Zhenggu, and the others would not have had to warn Yan Zhaoge time and time again. While this ingenious Flying Peak disciple had come on Fu Ting's orders, he actually did not understand the actual situation. He had primarily come here to explain the matter of the Brocade Emperor, having failed to meet him earlier and being unable to make up for it now. It could be seen that this ingenious Flying Peak disciple was actually rather puzzled with the Brocade Emperor's status. Meeting two martial practitioners who had yet to even ascend the immortal bridge seemed to be a very casual thing for him. He could not understand why Fu Ting had specially sent someone to explain. Still, he was still very polite, not showing any arrogance in his words or actions. Yan Zhaoge naturally would not explain the matter of the immortal court to him, as he sent him off after receiving him. Looking at Yuan Zhengfeng, Fu Enshu, Fang Juan, and the other higher echelon experts of Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoge silently sighed. He could not explain the matter of the immortal court to that ingenious Flying Peak disciple from earlier, nor could he explain it in detail to his own people. As for his whereabouts following the destruction of the minor No Hatred Dao arena earlier, Yen Zhaoge could only explain it by saying that he had found his way back after having fallen into the chaotic flows of space. The Buddhist sects became a good cover, and Yuan Zhengfeng and the others already knew about it. Is father still in secluded cultivation? After bidding them farewell, Yen Zhaoge returned to his lodgings and asked Ahu, because the Northern Ocean clone had remained on the mountain. Not only did Yen Zhaoge know that Feng Yinsheng had already successfully transcended mortality and entered sainthood, having also been adventuring outside, he had long since known that when the minor No Hatred Dao arena had collapsed, Yen Di, who had been separated from him, had already returned to Broad Creed Mountain in the world beyond worlds. Calculating the time, Yen Di should not have crashed into the territory of the immortal court or Buddhism yet. However, after returning, Yen Di quickly entered secluded cultivation. Such a hurried action was rarely seen by Yen Di. He had told Yen Zhaoge before entering secluded cultivation. Therefore, it should not be anything bad. Yen Zhaoge was still at ease. Ahu scratched his big head and answered, "Patriarch is still in seclusion." Yen Zhaoge nodded before smiling at Ahu. Yunsheng and senior apprentice brother Su have both transcended mortality and entered sainthood. You have to work hard too. In terms of aptitude and comprehension ability, this big fellow before him wasn't the slightest bit inferior to Xue Fei, Tang Yonghao, and the others. Xue Fei had remained in the vast ocean world for a very long time before this, having cultivated for a rather long time. Still, Ahu had been by Yen Zhaoge's side and had abundant resources of all kinds. Also, having cultivated in the favorable environment of the world beyond worlds these past few years, he had not been left far behind by Xue Fei. At around 40 years of age, while he had yet to step into the transcending mortality stage, he was still a late essence talisman martial grandmaster, having established his heavenly altar. In terms of age, he was also very young in the world beyond worlds. While he could not compare to Fu Ting, Long Hanhua, Zhuang Chaowei, and Zheng Emo, those people had all cultivated in extremely superior environments since young. Who had only been in the world beyond worlds for a few years. Feng Yinsheng was a maiden of extreme Yin, aided by the extreme Yin crown. Her situation was unique and could not be compared. If this was the eight extremities world of the past, there would be no one else besides Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di who possessed such speed. Of course, what left many speechless was the fact that such an essence talisman martial grandmaster still followed Yen Zhaoge around, willingly becoming his servant. From the looks of it, Yen Zhaoge's cultivation base was much higher than Ahu's. As a lofty-seeing divinity martial saint, it seemed very normal for him to have a martial grandmaster as his servant, actually let alone the eight extremities world. This was extremely rare even in the world beyond worlds. Martial practitioners who had attained the essence talisman martial grandmaster realm and possessed the potential to transcend mortality and enter sainthood all had their own pride. Martial practitioners who were humble were common, while those who were lowly were rare. Even if there were those who were willing to become servants, they were often those whose hopes of advancing upwards had already been severed, as they were like the setting sun over the western mountains. There was virtually no one like Ahu who was as young and had limitless potential, yet was willing to become someone else's servant. Those who were familiar with Yen Zhaoge and him, let alone Mu Jun, Zhang Ming, and Qin Zhiliang of Golden Court Mountain, who were shocked. Even those of Broad Creed Mountain themselves were astonished at how Ahu's cultivation base was still the same as before despite having risen. After all, Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di had never had any intention of suppressing or restricting Hu. Yet, this big fella himself still did as he pleased, remaining the same as he had in the past. The affairs of the world were ever-changing, but in the hearts of Hu and Huang Hutting, there seemed to only remember that the family head had saved him and his grandfather. Therefore, no matter what he became or how high his cultivation base was, this life of his would forever belong to the Yen family. Young master, I feel that I am not far from the transcending mortality stage. Hu chuckled. Yen Zhaoge rolled his eyes. You should be more careful. Han Long is already about to catch up. Hu instantly grimaced. That kid. He suddenly thought of something, saying, Right, young master, there's something. Little Shi Jun obtained a fortuitous encounter while traveling outside. Feeling that it would not be easy for him to handle, he reported it to the clan. The family head is in secluded cultivation, and the old chief and Elder Fong said that he would hand it over to you when you returned. Yes, Grand Master and second apprentice uncle told me about it briefly. Yen Zhaoge's expression turned solemn. I heard that it might be related to the direct lineage of the Grand Clear lineage. In the Eight Extremities world, Broad Creed Mountain could be considered a relatively orthodox lineage of the Grand Clear lineage. Its founder, the heaven-opening old man Chiu Yuan, had established the Clear Chi Profound Art, which had been Broad Creed Mountain's foundation for many years. The clan's secret martial arts, the Eight Extreme Arts, had all originated from this. Currently, however, Broad Creed Mountain had already come to a consensus regarding matters related to the direct lineage of the Grand Clear lineage. As long as Yen Zhaoge was free, he would be the one to handle it. Hu said, It seems to be a clue to a cave manor left behind by an ancestor. There are some coincidences within, and it is not easy to find. After a few years, the cave manor will automatically appear, and only then will outsiders be able to find it. Counting the days, it should be around these 2 years or so. The clan is also unable to confirm it at the moment. As he said this, Hu handed over an item. Receiving it, Yen Zhaoge saw that it was a damaged horsetail whisk. Chapter 940. Having remained in the vast ocean world for a rather long period of time, Shi Jun, who had always been diligently cultivating without slacking off, his current cultivation base was already not low. Of Broad Creed Mountain's younger generation, Shi Jun was ranked at the top. What was especially noteworthy was that he was Su Fei's disciple, and was actually the current 4th-generation disciple of Broad Creed Mountain. Right now, not only was he at the top of the 4th-generation disciples, but he had even surpassed many seniors. Of Broad Creed Mountain's 3rd-generation disciples, other than Yen Zhaoge, Feng Yunsheng, and Su Fei, who were far ahead, only Si Kongqing was superior to him. Ying Longtu's talent was higher, but he had cultivated for a shorter period of time. His current cultivation level was similar to Shi Jun's. After coming to the world beyond worlds, Shi Jun had not relaxed at all, as he had instead worked even harder, causing Yen Zhaoge, Yen Di, Yuan Zhengfeng, and Su Fei to feel incomparably gratified. At this moment, this damaged horsetail whisk in Yen Zhaoge's hands was something that Shi Jun had inadvertently obtained while traveling outside a few days ago. Yes, Grandmaster and the others have judged correctly. There is indeed some hint of the Grand Clear direct lineage's aura within. Analyzing that horsetail whisk, Yen Zhaoge discovered that the spiritual qi within was too thin to be of much use. However, the runes on the surface of the horsetail whisk formed a few runes. Even though they were badly damaged, one could still make out some clues. It could be seen that this horsetail whisk was once a saint weapon. However, that was already history. Yen Zhaoge's fingers streaked across the broken horsetail whisk. Since the time is not yet ripe, we should just wait patiently, waiting for that cave manor to appear before making our plans. After settling down, Yen Zhaoge also began pondering about the problem of his own cultivation. While Yen Zhaoge had only seen half of the great battle between the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd this time, it was still an extremely precious experience for him. As compared to most of the spectators, Yen Zhaoge's gains were even greater. The clash between the Jade Clear Lineage's Heaven Opening Scripture and the Grand Clear Lineage's earlier Heaven Supreme martial arts resulted in mutual reinforcement and suppression. Other than the Taiji Inyang Palm, Yen Zhaoge had not grasped any of the other supreme martial arts. However, as a cultivator of the three pure ones, he still felt that he had benefited greatly from watching such a high-level battle. As for the study of his own martial arts, he had gained many new insights. At the 6th level of the Martial Saint realm, the late seeing divinity stage, he began refining many obscure acupoints to see divinity, resonating with the actual stars of the universe. This process was not difficult for Yen Zhaoge, who had accumulated so much. In the mountains, one did not know the length of the sun and moon. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Yen Zhaoge's cultivation these past 2 years had been extremely smooth. As long as the first hidden acupoint was successfully refined to become a god, it would be a good start and a good start. The rest would follow naturally. Therefore, to Yen Zhaoge, there was no need for him to expend much energy here. He only had to patiently advance one step at a time. However, he was about to face a difficult problem. The bottleneck between the 6th and 7th levels of the Martial Saint realm. That was stepping onto the immortal bridge, breaking through from the late-seeing divinity stage to the early immortal bridge stage. Only upon ascending the immortal bridge could a martial practitioner be considered to have truly taken a step towards the path of immortality. After much hard work, with great talent, perseverance, and luck, he finally arrived before the immortal gate and tried to push it open. Before the immortal bridge realm, seeing divinity martial saints all strove to refine their acupoints to see divinity, causing their acupoints to be like actual stars, as it was like a primordial universe had been opened within their bodies. However, just refining one's aperture to achieve divinity and resonating with a real star was still a long way from opening up a universe within one's body. He was just laying the foundation and making preparations. The simplest principle was that in the real universe up in the sky, the sun rising and the moon setting, numerous stars gathering in an endless cycle that circulated without end. There were profound principles within patterns, star orbits, heavenly rivers, life and death. How was it unchanging, rigidly remaining where it was? What did not move were the lamps lit by humans, not the stars up in the sky. Therefore, the hallmark of the early immortal bridge stage was that martial practitioners had to be able to circulate the stars within their bodies. It was not the circulation of their true essence. Instead, their acupoints that had already seen divinity would have to circulate as well. Only then would their internal universe begin to possess some of the flair of the actual starry sky of the universe. Only when martial practitioners left the mortal realm and ascended towards the immortal realm could they be considered to have taken their first true step. It was precisely because of this that starting from the 7th level of the Martial Saint realm was known as the Immortal Bridge, the bridge to ascending to immortality. This would not be easy. In the Royal Reed Sea that year, the Radiant Light sects Luo Ziyuan, the Dim Darkness sects Zhou Haoxing, the Grand Xian dynasty's King Xuanmu, and the chief of Copper Men Island's Gongsun, Wu had all been stuck at the peak of the 6th level of the Martial Saint realm for many years. They were only a half step away from ascending the immortal bridge. Yet this half step was so close yet so far away, resembling a heavenly chasm. With an immortal bridge martial saint presiding over them, their status in the entire world beyond worlds would be completely different. This was because the martial arts of many sects were insufficient for people to cultivate to the immortal bridge stage. If they wanted to achieve a breakthrough, they would either have the guidance of an expert a great fortuitous encounter, or an unparalleled genius that was hard to come by even once in 1,000 years would appear in their sect, assisting them in improving their martial arts to the next level. Still, whatever the method, it would clearly not be that easy. Broad Creed Mountain was currently rather renowned in the world beyond worlds, even having overturned massive entities like the Grand Xian dynasty and the star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide. Still, many people who had only heard of Broad Creed Mountain and not had direct contact with it would still be unconsciously looking down on it. What they were more concerned about was the immortal artifact left behind by the dim Radiant Emperor, the Extreme Yang Seal, and the Extreme Yin Crown. This was directly related to Broad Creed Mountain not having an immortal bridge. Still, Yen Zhaoge believed that the situation would be completely different in a few days. His father, Yen Di, had directly entered secluded cultivation the last time he had returned to the mountain. While he had not explained it in detail, Yen Zhaoge had a premonition. His father had likely encountered some unique, fortuitous encounter in the outside world previously, giving him a chance to attempt a breakthrough into the immortal bridge stage. Like Yen Zhaoge, after cultivating in his first obscure acupoint to the seeing divinity stage and stepping into the 6th level of the martial saint realm, the opening of his other obscure acupoints and dark acupoints would not pose much difficulty to Yen Di. Ever since stepping into the 6th level of the martial saint realm, Yen Di had still been advancing triumphantly like before. What he lacked was a chance to ascend the immortal bridge. Yen Zhaoge guessed that Yen Di had hopes of breaking through this bottleneck this time. On the other hand, if he only cultivated in the primordial heavenly scriptures of the Jade Clear lineage, Yen Zhaoge himself was actually confident that he would definitely be able to ascend to the immortal bridge in a year or 3 years at the latest. Still, Yen Zhaoge did not want to do that unless he had no other choice. That would be equivalent to giving up on the foundation that he had painstakingly established while simultaneously cultivating in the 3 purities. Still, if he wanted to merge the 3 purities and ascend the immortal bridge, Yen Zhaoge now required a peak martial art of the 3 clear direct lineages. Of the 10 primordial heavenly scriptures of the Jade Clear direct lineage, Yen Zhaoge possessed a total of 6 of them, as he did not have to worry about this. When he had transcended mortality and entered sainthood, he had possessed the immortal ending sword in the prime clear lineage, as he had also used the legacy of virtue to return to simplicity in place of the grand clear martial arts. When he had broken through space and seen true divinity, he had possessed the immortal trapping sword in the prime clear lineage and the Taiji Yin-Yang palm in the grand clear lineage. Yet, if he were to attempt to ascend the immortal bridge now, the grand clear lineage and the prime clear lineage were both lacking. If there was no way to resolve this, cultivating in the 3 purities simultaneously would be equivalent to cutting off his path forward. The cave manor shows signs of opening. Yen Zhaoge looked at the broken horsetail whisk in his hand. The horsetail whisk, which had not moved for 2 years, now shockingly flickered slightly. I hope that it really is a legacy manor of the grand clear direct lineage. If there are any martial arts left behind within, that would be of great help to me. Chapter 941. If Yen Zhaoge did not search for a direct lineage of the grand clear lineage and a direct lineage of the prime clear lineage, he would only have 2 choices. Or he could change his path, give up on his previous cultivation, and walk a different path. Otherwise, he would remain at the 6th level of the martial saint realm, the late seeing divinity stage, his cultivation base coming to a halt thereafter. The merging of the 3 purities had resulted in Yen Zhaoge's powerful strength, which allowed him to look down on all life forms at the same cultivation level. Still, it was much more difficult to advance unceasingly. Keeping the whisk in his hand, once more, Yen Zhaoge stood up and left his lodgings. His father, Yen Di, was still in secluded cultivation. It had already been 2 years since then. Ever since Yen Di had returned to the mountain, he had entered secluded cultivation and had yet to emerge. Yen Zhaoge came to the heaven-rising peak, bidding farewell to Yuan Zhengfeng, Fang Juan, and the others who were currently presiding over the clan. Then he brought Hu with him, riding on Pan, and leaving the mountain together. Xiao Ai was also in seclusion, although he was easily distracted, not focused enough, and liked to think about things that Yen Zhaoge thought were a little nonsensical. However, Xiao Ai did not slack off when it came to studying martial arts and formations. Her talent was extremely high, and with the support of Broad Creed Mountain and Yen Zhaoge's abundant martial and material resources, not only was her cultivation speed not slow, she could even put many descendants of famous sects to shame. In the Tao of formations, she reigned above everyone else, being the person of Broad Creed Mountain below, the martial saint realm with the highest attainments in formations. At the same cultivation level, in the entire Broad Creed Mountain, other than Yen Zhaoge, there was no one who could surpass him. It was also fortunate that after Xiao Ai had entered Broad Creed Mountain, she had not been out for much, not being known to outsiders. Otherwise, she would have been like Hu, shocked to the core. Before Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di, this woman was also willing to act as a maidservant. Even though Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di actually viewed her as an in-name disciple of Xue Chuqing. However, Xiao Ai didn't think that way. Therefore, Broad Creed Mountain looked rather speechlessly at this late Essence Talisman martial grandmaster, who usually followed by Yen Zhaoge's side, calling him young master this and young master this and young master, that most of the time drooling as he stared at the handsome guys of the clan. Xiao Ai's seclusion this time was to attempt to break through the bottleneck. If they succeeded, Broad Creed Mountain would have yet another transcending mortality martial grandmaster. Moreover, he was a transcendent martial grandmaster whose lifespan was so young that it made one's hair stand on end. Those who had ascended from the Eight Extremities world and had originally entered Broad Creed Mountain's lineage, having heard of Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di's growth trajectory, was one thing. There were a few people of the world beyond worlds who had entered Broad Creed Mountain out of admiration these past few years, suffering setbacks time and again. If it was just one or two, it would still be fine, but why had Broad Creed Mountain produced so many such monstrous figures? Was this really a sect that rose up from the lower realm? Although they had come out of admiration for him, they were still dazzled by him. After the initial shock, all that was left was admiration and relief. To be able to enter such a sect, one's future would obviously be bright. Yen Zhaoge, Yuan Zhengfeng, and the others were naturally happy to see this. At this moment, Broad Creed Mountain had still not officially opened its doors to accept disciples, still accumulating its strength. On the day that it officially opened its doors, it would definitely have a flourishing atmosphere. When either father or I have stepped into the immortal bridge realm, the time should be about ripe. Sitting on Pan's back, Yen Zhaoge pondered as he hurried along. He had already asked Shi Jun where he had obtained that half-broken whisk earlier. Now that he had an idea of what was going on, he headed east. Pan's current strength was extraordinary, his legs powerful, and his speed swift. Traversing mountains was but the blink of an eye as Yen Zhaoge traveled. A thought from earlier surfaced in his mind once more. Appraising the broken whisk before him, he thought, this thing is broken. I have half of it. Then, is the other half completely destroyed, or does it still exist? If it still existed, could it have fallen into the hands of others? There might be some setbacks in his search for the manner of a predecessor this time. Arriving at the place where Shi Jun had obtained the whisk, Yen Zhaoge got Pan to descend. While the blazing sun was currently high up in the sky amidst the numerous valleys, a streak of white light seemed to descend from the sky. Yen Zhaoge raised that broken whisk. After coming into contact with the white light, the radiance on its surface instantly grew denser. A thin white line extended into the distance, pointing into the distance. Still, this white line was ethereal, not being an actual ray of light. Only the person wielding that half-broken whisk would be able to see it. With the whisk currently in Yen Zhaoga's hands, Ahu and Pan Pan were unable to see it. Let's continue on our way. Yen Zhaoga passed the whisk to Ahu, who smilingly received it, patting Pan Pan's head. Pan Pan swiveled his huge head rather lazily before striding off into the distance once more. This time, the distance was much greater. While Pan Pan was not slow, he still needed some time before he could arrive. The Earth boundary was still within the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Still, Yen Zhaoga estimated that the whisk was probably pointing to an extremely distant place. It was very likely that the easternmost tip of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory was where the Wilderness Sea was. The so-called Wilderness Sea, as its name suggested, was desolate and uninhabited, ancient and primitive. It was vast, being much larger than places like the Royal Reed Sea and the Setting Sun Archipelago. In terms of size, it was virtually a third of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. There were many risks involved that would cause one to shrink back. In the entire southeast, besides the Exalt Chaojia, there was probably no one who could freely enter and leave it. Thinking about it, with the world beyond worlds having existed for so long, if it was a place with many people, any good treasures would have long since been plundered. Situations like the evil sword Tao Tai and the phoenix bone left behind by Ancestor He in the clear scenic region of the Royal Reed Sea were extremely rare. The only reason that it had been preserved was because the clear scenic region was enveloped by the endless magnetic storms all year round. Speaking of which, of the places that Yunsheng wanted to go to back then, one of them was the Wilderness Sea. Yen Zhaoga muttered to himself, "I wonder where she is now?" Knowing that their destination was the Wilderness Sea, Ahu seemed to understand why Yen Zhaoga had suddenly been in low spirits. He scratched his big head, thinking for a moment before saying nothing as he imitated Yen Zhaoga and sighed. Yen Zhaoga very quickly calmed his mind, focusing his attention on the whisk before him once more. The Royal Reed Sea was at the westernmost tip of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Meanwhile, the Wilderness Sea was at the easternmost tip of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Yen Zhaoga's group was equivalent to traversing the entire southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Fortunately, according to the movements of the whisk, the cave manor of his ancestor was only about to open soon. There was still some time before it would completely open. Yen Zhaoga still had enough time. Still, as they passed through a region of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory known as the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, Yen Zhaoga felt the half-broken whisk in his hand suddenly shake strangely. Chapter 942. Yen Zhaoga looked at the whisk in Ahu's hands. Ahu was also looking quizzically at the horsetail whisk before raising his head to look dazedly at Yen Zhaoga. "Just now, that horsetail whisk shook, right?" Yen Zhaoga asked. Ahu nodded. "Yes, young master." He pointed to the east. It wasn't just the horsetail whisk that shook. The white line that leads the way also shook slightly, but it recovered in an instant. Something affected the horsetail whisk. Yen Zhaoga stroked his lower chin. It shouldn't be that cave manor. Otherwise, the white thread would have changed directions. Ahu grinned. "Young master, could it be the other half of the horsetail whisk?" Yen Zhaoga said. "That is possible, but it might not necessarily be the horsetail whisk itself. It might be some traces of it. If it was the other half of the horsetail whisk, then the other half of the horsetail whisk would have a greater reaction." Calculating slightly within his heart, Yen Zhaoga said, "Let's stop here at the consecutive Drum Mountain Range for a while and look around. Sharpening the axe does not delay the work of chopping firewood. We still have time." The situation of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range was similar to that of the Royal Reed Sea. the Jade Sun Mountain Range, and the Setting Sun Archipelago, as they were all territories under the jurisdiction of the Southeastern Yangheaven Territory. The size of this place was slightly smaller than that of the Royal Reed Sea. Still, there were still some powerful powers active here, thriving and developing. Yen Zhaoge traversed the river like a ferocious dragon, also not intentionally concealing his tracks, very quickly drawing the attention of the local powers. However, Yen Zhaoge did not mind this at all. Instead, he openly contacted the other party and inquired about this place. The current him could be considered to have made a name for himself in the southeastern Yangheaven territory. This time, he was merely passing through and did not plan to stay for long. Considering Yen Zhaoge's illustrious fame and his close relationship with Golden Court Mountain, the local powers of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range were more than happy to establish good relations with him. Perhaps some people would covet Yen Zhaoge's entire body of treasures, but they would also have to weigh their own worth. Those of the other places of the world beyond worlds who had never personally come into contact with it would more or less underestimate Yen Zhaoge, who was still a seeing divinity martial saint. However, in the southeastern Yangheaven territory, there were comparatively fewer such people. To such people, Broad Creed Mountain's initial reputation had all been established by this young man. This person could not be underestimated just because of his age and cultivation. Also, as many people saw it, an immortal artifact like the Dim Radiant will should have been kept at Broad Creed Mountain, guarding it rather than being carried around by Yen Zhaoge. Under such circumstances, even those who were extremely daring and wanted to take the risk out of desperation would feel that it was not worth it. With a local power spreading the news, it was naturally much more convenient and faster than for Yen Zhaoge and two outsiders who had just set foot in the consecutive Drum Mountain Range. Soon, news came back one after another. After Yen Zhaoge had sorted through his inspection, something caught his attention. Not long before he had arrived at the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, there had been a massacre. The target of the annihilation was a force at the southern foot of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range. It was called the Xia clan, also known as the Listening Thunder Peaks Xia clan. The Listening Thunder Peaks Xia family was not a local power of the world beyond worlds. Instead, like Broad Creed Mountain and the Heavy Sun sect of the Floating Gate world, they originated from a lower world. The old master of the Xia clan was originally a solitary martial artist in the lower realm. He was obsessed with martial arts and wholeheartedly focused on climbing higher. However, he had not been satisfied after having seen all the mountains in the lower world. Instead, he had continued cultivating, finally successfully breaking through space and seeing true divinity. After having broken through to the seeing divinity martial saint realm, the Xia family's old master had ascended to the new heavens and earth of the world beyond worlds, finally settling down here. Afterwards, he had married a female elder of a major power of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, settling down here by relying on that major power, finally establishing the current foundation of the Listening Thunder Peaks Xia family. Currently, there were already several generations of descendants. Still, a few years ago, amidst the struggle between the major powers of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, the backer of the Listening Thunder Peaks Xia family had declined. The experts of the Xia family, their first family head included, had suffered heavy casualties, as the Listening Thunder Peaks Xia family had declined along with it. These days, the Xia family had been searching for a new backer. Still, before the dust had settled, yet another great tribulation had suddenly descended. This tribulation had become a calamity of extinction. The power that had destroyed the Xia family was known as 3-Foot Mountain. It was not a local power of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, instead being active in the Green Peak High Plains, which bordered the consecutive Drum Mountain Range. Like Yen Zhaoge this time, it had been a powerful dragon crossing the border. When the local powers of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range had questioned them, 3-Foot Mountain had said that a descendant of the Xia family had killed one of their disciples. Thus, they had come in retaliation. Still, 3-Foot Mountain had no intention of interfering in the affairs of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range. In truth, they had indeed immediately left after having destroyed the Xia family, not interfering in the affairs of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range at all. The internal strife of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range was so severe that they could not be bothered to investigate this matter at all. Still, Yan Zhaoge was rather mindful of the fact that 3-Foot Mountain had headed east after having destroyed the Xia family. Meanwhile, the Green Peak High Plains were to the north of the consecutive Drum Mountain Range. Heading east was in the direction of the Wilderness Sea. Green Peak High Plains, 3-Foot Mountain? Yan Zhaoge paid attention to this, but did not reveal it on the surface. He had vaguely heard of 3-Foot Mountain before, because this power was rather unique in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. It was somewhat similar to the Grand Xian dynasty, yet not completely the same. There were other experts behind 3-Foot Mountain as well. Still, they were not like the Grand Xian dynasty, a ferocious dragon crossing the river as they had stepped foot into the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Instead, it was a certain expert who had casually guided 3-Foot Mountain as he had traversed the southeastern Yang Heaven territory in the past, allowing 3-Foot Mountain to grow from a relatively ordinary sect to a major power of the Green Peak High Plains, as it could be considered famous in the entire southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Still, on the whole, 3-Foot Mountain, which had been established in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory since ancient times, was still different from the Grand Xian dynasty. Golden Court Mountain was also not as guarded against 3-Foot Mountain as they were against the Grand Xian dynasty. Yan Zhaoge passed by Listening Thunder Peak, seemingly intentionally yet unintentionally. Still, he did not stop as he was just casually passing by. In the process of passing by Listening Thunder Peak, that half of the horsetail whisk shook slightly before it returned to normal once more. Yan Zhaoge and Hu exchanged glances, looks of understanding appearing on their faces. Young master, it looks like the other half of the horsetail whisk was originally with this Listening Thunder Peak High Plains Xia family. Hu said, it is just that news somehow leaked out, with 3-Foot Mountain in the distant Green Peak High Plains learning of it. Therefore, they destroyed this Xia family and snatched away the horsetail whisk. They headed east, probably because they were unearthing the legacy manor of a predecessor. Therefore, they rushed to the Wilderness Sea. The reason that traces had been left behind at Listening Thunder Peak might be because the Xia family usually refined that half of the horsetail whisk. Yan Zhaoge said, yes, that is most likely the case. The two spoke no further as they sat on Pan, continuing east, while Yan Zhaoge had not asked much about the matters of 3-Foot Mountain and the Xia family. Still, two successive outsiders heading east after passing the consecutive Drum Mountain Range had still drawn the attention of the local powers here. Yan Zhaoge did not really mind this. He was still more concerned about the Wilderness Sea to the east. Chapter 943. After leaving the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, Yan Zhaoge and Hu sat on Pan's back and headed east. After a long journey, they arrived at the region of the Wilderness Sea. Before them was the vast sea. Its color was unusual as it resembled undulating plains of white snow. Seeing that snowy white seawater, Yan Zhaoge knew that he had already officially stepped into the domain of the Wilderness Sea. The situation here was similar to that of the Wind Domain's Great Western Desert, the endless ocean beyond the sea, and the marsh of illusory sea of the Lake Domain. Due to the unique geographical environment, even powerful martial practitioners would find it hard to establish a foothold there. The environment was harsh to the extreme as few people traversed it. Therefore, Some fugitives who were unable to establish a foothold elsewhere would hide here. They were all people who could drink and get drunk today, and lived every day to their heart's content. For disciples of major sects, a backer would not be of much use against these vicious people, as they could only rely on their own skills. If they offended those fugitives, they would likely kill them first regardless of their background. If experts of major sects came to hunt them down, they would hide in the wilderness sea. If they could avoid it, they would do so. If they could not, their fates would be up to the heavens. In the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, besides disciples of Golden Court Mountain who these fugitives could be wary of, everyone else had to be careful of. Yen Zhaoge did not feel that it was all that dangerous. It was just that this place was filled with crooks and dragons. If news of this manor was leaked, the situation might become even more complicated. Horsetail whisk, Yen Zhaoge shaded his eyes, gazing towards the vast white sea in the distance. Who handed over that half-broken horsetail whisk? As Yen Zhaoge received it, a white line instantly appeared before him, extending from the horsetail whisk into the distance, and heading straight into the depths of the wilderness sea. Yen Zhaoge lightly stroked the horsetail whisk, infusing his true essence within. The horsetail whisk trembled with a wong sound. Then, the color of that white line actually gradually began to change. It turned from white to green, before gradually turning a faint gold. Yen Zhaoge drew a few strokes in midair, forming a simple, ancient rune. Pan Pan shrunk beneath him before being picked up by Ahu. The rune expanded in midair, transforming into a clump of radiance that enveloped Yen Zhaoge and Ahu. Then, this clump of radiance was drawn along by that faint golden line, swiftly flying towards the depths of the wilderness sea like a fisherman retracting his rod after biting on the hook. The clump of light that enveloped Yen Zhaoge and the others transformed into a speck of light that flew past the wilderness sea, vanishing in an instant. However, there were still people in the desolate sea who noticed the light spot. Those who were active here, even if they weren't fugitives but disciples of large sects who came here to gain experience, were all extremely daring. Seeing this, they were all tempted and tried to follow. However, the speed of Yen Zhaoge and the others was so fast that not long after those who had attempted to track them had mostly fallen behind. There were a few people who were able to keep up, but as they saw the speck of light going deeper and deeper, they couldn't help but slow down and hesitate. The deeper one went into the desolate sea, the more dangerous it was. Within that clump of light, Yen Zhaoge and Ahu could similarly feel the pressure growing greater and greater. From time to time, a jade-green pillar of fire would shoot up into the sky from the vast white sea. With the heaven-earth reversing axe in hand, Yen Zhaoge hacked horizontally and vertically, hacking apart that ferocious green pillar of fire as he unceasingly opened a path. He recognized that this was the desolate underworld flame, an extremely high-quality Yin flame. It wasn't scorching hot, but instead extremely cold, surpassing 10,000-year-old ice. Once one was touched by this flame, not only would one's body be injured, even one's soul would be incinerated. Moreover, it was like maggots in one's bones, and it was difficult to remove. Even the slightest contact with it would result in one's death. Only those who had ascended to the immortal realm would be able to completely ignore its threat. Even human exalts would have to circulate their martial arts to resist it and clear a path if they encountered it. For martial practitioners below the immortal bridge stage, they might not be completely safe even if they were accompanied by high-grade sacred artifacts. While Yen Zhaoge did not fear it, the desolate underworld flame was merely one of the many threats of the desolate sea. Besides the desolate underworld flame, there were many other evil tribulations that were not inferior to it in the least. Yen Zhaoge felt as though he was facing the combined attacks of more than one immortal bridge martial saint at any time as he traversed it. The desolate sea was vast as it occupied roughly a third of the entire southeastern Yangheaven territory. With so many tribulations obstructing his path within, Yen Zhaoge would be extremely slow as he traversed it. Fortunately, he was guided by the mechanism that allowed him to maintain a high speed as he advanced. Still, if he walked in a straight line this way, Yen Zhaoge would only be able to forcibly resist the incoming tribulations as he would be unable to evade them. For the sake of speed and efficiency earlier on, this was fine. Anyway, with the peerless heavenly scripture, the cyclic heavenly scripture, the yin-yang heavenly scripture, the taiji yin-yang palm, and many other supreme martial arts as a foundation, Yen Zhaoge's true essence was extremely abundant as his recovery ability was strong as well. Still, the deeper he ventured into the interior of the desolate sea, the more intense these dangers became. Towards the end, the desolate underworld flame was rare. Instead, another tribulation known as the baleful Black Devil appeared. It did not originate from the White Sea. Instead, it was a black fog in the form of threads that wreathed the air above the sea's surface. That black fog that resembled ink was even more terrifying than the desolate underworld flame. The destructive power it could unleash was virtually comparable to that of a late immortal bridge martial saint. The black fog resembled sticky ink as it was hard to disperse. Even if it was temporarily broken through, it would definitely reassemble very quickly as it continued attacking relentlessly. It was everywhere in all directions. This way, it was as though numerous experts of the 9th level of the martial saint realm were attacking him simultaneously. Faced with such an attack, Yen Zhaoge would not foolishly continue clashing head-on. He stopped the mechanism from earlier, controlling his own speed and direction as he advanced amidst the numerous threads of black fog. No wonder people often say that of the martial practitioners of the southeastern Yangheaven territory, only the southeastern exalt can freely enter and leave this place. Who looked earnestly at those baleful black devil. This place is much more terrifying than the black nightmare storms of the great western desert of the 8 extremities world. Yen Zhaoge said, that is only natural. Any random strand of baleful black devil would probably be enough to destroy the entire 8 extremities world. Young master, Ahu suddenly swiveled his head to look at Yen Zhaoge. Do you think that martial practitioners have the possibility of refining this baleful black devil for their own power? At this moment, Ahu's face no longer had its usual indolence, as it was instead extremely solemn. How could there not be? Yen Zhaoge smiled. There was a supreme martial art of pre-great calamity times known as the Wind Devil Quicksaber. It involved refining various kinds of dangerous evil winds, assimilating them into one's saber chi. The baleful black devil is also one of the options that can be chosen. Also, it is one of the options with the highest difficulty as well as the greatest power. Still, in order to refine the baleful black devil, one has to be an immortal bridge martial saint at the very least before attempting it. Hearing his words, Ahu did not continue asking. Still, from his expression, Yen Zhaoge knew that this big fella had remembered it. However unscrupulous he was in front of Yen Zhaoge, who had always been very diligent in his cultivation. The two chatted as they ventured deeper into the wilderness sea. After who knew how long, Yen Zhaoge suddenly saw a hint of sunlight vaguely lighting up amidst the black fog before him, resembling floating clouds obscuring the sun. The figure of a massive bird was indistinctly visible amidst that sunlight. Dark feathers, 3 legs. Chapter 944. The 3-legged golden crow, also known as the Great Sun Golden Crow, was the legendary son of the vast heavens, the essence of earlier heaven fire. It was in existence on the same level as the phoenix, true dragon, Qilin, and Kuanping. The floating life world had fire crows that were related to the golden crow. While they could not be considered true descendants of the golden crow, merely being of mixed blood amongst mixed blood, Still, they possessed the ability to incinerate the heavens and boil the seas. Still, they were much inferior to the true three-legged golden crow. A fully matured, pure-blooded three-legged golden crow that had cultivated to the peak later on could directly transform into the great sun, being comparable to the true sun star, as it was an existence that did not belong to the human realm. Yen Zhaoge was very interested in the three-legged golden crow because such divine beasts seemed to have gone extinct following the Great Calamity. While the dragon race had withered, they had still existed following the Great Calamity. Meanwhile, there was little news of the golden crow. Still, the silhouetted golden crow before him was clearly not an actual golden crow. Southeastern Yangheaven Territory, Green Peak High Plains, 3-foot mountain. The profundities of its supreme martial art, the golden crow incinerating world scripture, originated precisely from the true intent of the great sun golden crow's power. This supreme martial art had belonged to a major power known as Golden Crow Valley in pre-Great Calamity times. Following the Great Calamity, the founder of 3-foot mountain had coincidentally obtained a remnant of the golden crow incinerating world scripture, establishing 3-foot mountain with it. Afterwards, the remnant scripture had been completed, and 3-foot mountain had thus become one of the greatest powers of the Green Peak High Plains, renowned throughout the entire southeastern Yangheaven territory. Ahead of Yen Zhaoge, the silhouetted golden crow unceasingly traversed the dense, baleful black devilish qi amidst the sunlight, evading numerous streams of black fog that resembled ink. "Oh, they have some trump cards." Seeing this, Yen Zhaoge raised his brows slightly. Surrounded by the baleful black devilish qi, it was like numerous ninth-level martial saints were attacking together. While it was not swift and agile enough, the destructive power of that black fog was truly shocking. Even most immortal bridge martial saints would be injured upon contact and killed upon contact. The baleful black devilish qi was too dense, as it would definitely not be easy to traverse through them. It was rumored that the chief of 3-foot mountain was a mid-immortal bridge martial saint. Although the golden crow incinerating world scripture was extremely exquisite, and there was also a high-grade sacred artifact guarding the mountain gate, it was still extremely dangerous to pass through the baleful black devil. Still, looking at it now, Yen Zhaoge saw that was still advancing unceasingly. There was pressure, but he could still cope with it. This caused Yen Zhaoge to involuntarily feel rather interested. He was even faster than those of 3-foot mountain, gradually catching up to them. However, guided by the horsetail whisk, they finally arrived at their destination. The golden crow silhouette also sensed that someone was behind it, but it didn't stop. Instead, it suddenly descended. The golden crow dodged the black devil baleful qi and descended into the sky above the sea. The snow-white seawater of the desolate sea was the most dangerous existence in itself. If anyone below the cultivation of an exalt martial saint dared to step into it, their flesh and blood would turn into a pool of blood in no time. Hence, those who entered the desolate sea would rather face dangers like the baleful black devil demon and the heavenly desolate dark flame than land on the surface of the sea. However, at this moment, a huge whirlpool appeared on the surface of the desolate sea. The center of the whirlpool led to the bottom of the sea. There was an expanse of deep darkness there, and it was blurry and indistinct, causing it to be difficult to see exactly what lay within. Looking over, Yen Zhaoge saw that the white line extended from the half-broken whisk in his hand was currently pointing towards the deep, bottomless darkness at the center of the vortex. Within that silhouette of the golden crow, there was clearly a white line as well that pointed towards the bottom of the vortex. The golden crow spread its wings, transforming into a streak of golden light as it shot swiftly into the center of the vortex, descending into the dim darkness. The all-encompassing golden light instantly vanished. Yen Zhaoge was neither flustered nor flustered as he descended towards the dim darkness at the bottom of the sea. As soon as he entered that dim darkness, Yen Zhaoge felt a change in the surrounding space, as he seemed to have passed through a door and entered another world. This is similar to when I was searching for the profound sky, purple gold furnace back then. Yen Zhaoge pondered as he stabilized himself, bringing Ah Hu and Pan Pan along as he traversed the dim darkness. When the light of day reappeared before their eyes, it was a rather dilapidated scene. The spiritual qi in this world had yet to dissipate completely. Still, it was chaotic beyond compare, as it was hard to discern. This world was not large. Its situation was rather similar to the dim, radiant mausoleum of the past, as it had existed specifically for a cave manor. Looking at the scene before them, it was indeed extremely long ago, as time had washed over it like water, no longer possessing its former appearance. Seeing this, it could be confirmed that this was indeed a manor left behind by a predecessor, its owner having already perished. Even if he had not perished, he had already left for who knew how long, never having returned. Yen Zhaoge even suspected that this place was like the foreign dimension where loose practitioner he had lived that year, having existed before the Great Calamity. While it had not been completely destroyed following the Great Calamity, it had still suffered a tribulation, resulting in such a scene. He, Zhaoge, surveyed his surroundings, not finding any traces of those of 3-Foot Mountain. It seemed like they had landed somewhere else. The distant lofty mountains were concealed amidst the white fog, appearing rather ethereal and otherworldly. Still, their origins were hard to discern. It was just that there seemed to be a Taoist temple amidst the white fog. Yen Zhaoge strode forward, heading towards that Taoist temple. As he walked, he discovered that this place was different. As he traversed that white fog, both space and time appeared strange. As Yen Zhaoge walked within, he could only feel as though he had never gotten close to the Taoist temple at all, as he was just walking in circles on the spot. He shook his head, a red sword glow vaguely flickering within his eyes. Beneath the sharpness of the immortal trapping sword that broke through space, the white fog before him instantly dispersed. As he continued walking, the path instantly became clear. As Yen Zhaoge continued on his way, he arrived before that Taoist temple in a flash. Yen Zhaoge halted his steps, seeing a decaying signboard outside the Taoist temple that was concealed amidst dust. He blew on it, the dust dispersing to reveal the mottled signboard on which 3 words were written, Taoist Temple. I don't have any impression of it. Yen Zhaoge muttered to himself. Was it built after the Great Calamity, or had it been someone who had secluded himself from the world before the Great Calamity? Before the Great Calamity, the martial repository of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace had virtually all records of the various major sects and powers of the universe. The only exception was the direct lineage of the 3 clear lineages. While the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace was aware of most of them, with the long passage of time, there would always be some who had secluded themselves from the world, unknown existences. Yen Zhaoge's heart jolted slightly as he walked to the left of the Taoist temple. After making a detour, he gazed down from the mountain. Halfway up the mountain in this direction, golden light was indeed flickering, concealed amidst the white fog as it resembled the rising sun. It was precisely those of 3-Foot Mountain. They were clearly not as fast as Yen Zhaoge, who wielded the immortal trapping sword, as Yen Zhaoge had arrived first despite having moved later. As those of 3-Foot Mountain raised their heads and gazed at the Taoist temple, they immediately saw Yen Zhaoge and Ahu standing beside it. Their expressions instantly changed. Sadly, while the distance between them seemed not far, beneath the effects of the white fog, it was like the distance between the heavens and the earth. Chapter 945. After glancing at those of 3-Foot Mountain, Yen Zhaoge turned and returned to the main gate of the Taoist temple. Later generations benefit from the shade planted by the predecessors. I wonder which senior this manor belongs to. Yen Zhaoge, pardon me. Yen Zhaoge pushed open the door and entered the temple. He saw an ancient tree. While it was not huge, it was old, and its leaves had long since become sparse. While it still contained some green tint, its trunk had long since been hollowed out. Ancestral mulberry tree. Yen Zhaoge nodded slowly. This was a spirit tree, whose leaves had a fragrant scent. When martial practitioners cultivated beneath it, they would be able to conserve their spirits and nourish their qi. Yen Zhaoge had once heard Mu Jun mention that such trees were still being cultivated in the current world beyond worlds. Still, from Yen Zhaoge's rough estimation, this ancestral mulberry tree should already be over 10,000 years old. The time flow of this cave manor was much slower than that of the world beyond worlds. As such, this ancestral mulberry tree was more likely to have been born before the Great Calamity. In that case, this cave manor of the Taoist temple must have already existed before the Great Calamity. It was just that it was unknown whether its owner had died due to the Great Calamity or some other reason. Yen Zhaoge, Ahu, and Pan Pan entered the main hall of the Taoist temple. However, they did not see the statues of the founders of the three purities, as it was instead completely empty. As they entered, changes immediately occurred within the space of the great hall before them. All-encompassing yellow sand suddenly arose within the hall, obscuring the heavens and the earth. This place shockingly formed a world of its own that could manifest all things. While its original owner had long since been gone and many years had passed, it was still able to manifest various wondrous phenomena that left one sighing in amazement. The yellow sandstorm was ferocious, in no way inferior to the baleful black devil of the wilderness sea earlier. Each grain of gravel was as bright as a crystal. Still, any one of them was sufficient to penetrate through the fleshly body of a martial saint expert that had been tempered countless times. The sandstorm was capable of riddling one full of holes. With Yen Zhaoge's strength, if he did not defend against it, forcibly taking it head-on with his body, he might not be able to escape unscathed. Young master, the original owner of this place, must have had an extremely high cultivation base when he was alive. Who knows where he came from? Ahu grimaced. Yen Zhaoge flashed the heaven-swallowing, earth-devouring box and patted it. The box opened, an ancient bronze sword that flickered with black light rising from within. As the evil sword Tao Tai entered his hand, Yen Zhaoge guided it with his sword, the brutal black light instantly transforming into a black hole, devouring the yellow sand before him. Yellow sand filled the sky and came from all directions, mixed with powerful astral winds. They cut through the void and resisted the suction of the black hole. While a portion of the sandstorm was devoured by the black hole, much of it still managed to pass through the obstruction of the black sword light, still attacking Yen Zhaoge's group. Yen Zhaoge's expression did not change as all-encompassing golden light gradually arose above his head. The extreme yang seal appeared, hovering high up in the air. Streaks of golden light descended, blocking off the remaining sandstorm. Yen Zhaoge brandished the evil sword Tao Tai, the vicious black sword light switching from defense to offense. The sword will of the immortal end sword that could destroy all living things was fused into the evil sword Tao Tai after the transformation, making the evil sword Tao Ye's sharpness even more ferocious. It cut through the sandstorm and opened up a path. Yen Zhaoge strode forward again and said, "If I'm not wrong, the previous owner of this cave manor was at least an expert who had already pushed open the door to immortality. As for his exact cultivation realm, it's hard to say. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for the protective restrictions here to still be so powerful after so many years had passed." Ahu's eyes instantly lit up. "Young master, could this place be like the dim, radiant mausoleum, having an immortal artifact?" Yen Zhaoga casually answered as he opened up a path. The possibility is not high. The original owner did not die here. Instead, he never returned after leaving. Even if he died, he would have died outside. Generally speaking, important treasures are usually carried on one's body. Ancestor He forging the evil sword Tao Tai was truly a coincidence, as it was extremely rare. Ahu scratched his head. Then, young master, wouldn't it be unlikely for you to find supreme martial arts of the grand, clear, direct lineage here as well? Yen Zhaoga said, that's not the case. From the outside of the courtyard, there should not be a single person living here. The original owner should have disciples to teach. If we can find their residence, we might be able to gain something. That's true. Ahu nodded. Looking at the yellow sand that was gradually being cleared away by Yen Zhaoga, he could not help but grin. Young master, now that you have opened up a path, it will be much more convenient for those of 3-Foot Mountain to enter later. Yen Zhaoga said nonchalantly, it's fine. Let them come. The early bird might not be the first to arrive. Those who are capable will be the ones to occupy it. If they want to fight, they will just have to rely on their own abilities. If they are not my match, so what if it is convenient for them because of me? Amidst his words, the sand before him suddenly dissipated. Yet, a strange great river now appeared before him, its water roaring as it rushed straight towards Yen Zhaoga. Yen Zhaoga did not halt in his footsteps as he still protected himself with the radiance of the extreme Yang seal before the evil sword Tao Tai switched from defense to offense, its sword-light devouring that river water wherever it passed. Still, the river water before him was clearly extraordinary. Yen Zhaoga actually felt the evil sword Tao Tai in his hand grow somewhat heavier. Also, it was getting heavier and heavier. The water of the heavy river, Yen Zhaoga realized. It was said that there had been a river in pre-Great Calamity times known as the Heavy River. As its name suggested, the river water was extremely heavy. While it was only a single drop, it was already as heavy as 10,000 caddies. The earth was unable to bear it, as it could only flow and collapse underground. There was an ancient saying of pre-Great Calamity times, the sky has the Milky Way, the earth has the heavy river. It referred to the water of the heavy river. The original owner of the Taoist temple had clearly obtained a small portion of the water vein of the heavy river with his great divine abilities, moving it here. While it cannot stump me, it will still require some effort. Yen Zhaoga smacked his lips, the sword light of the evil sword Tao Tai retracted, gradually condensing at a single point. That point had become unprecedentedly heavy, even heavier than the water of the heavy river. A hint of white light flickered on the tip of the black sword. The ferocious sword intent fought force with force this time, combining with the sword intent of the immortal ending sword as it forcibly hacked through the river water, obstructing Yen Zhaoga, allowing him to continue advancing. Still, with this, Yen Zhaoga's speed had slowed considerably. After he had hacked through the great river before him, the scenes before him changed once more as streams of golden flames appeared. These golden flames appeared exceptionally calm, not giving off a violent, restless feeling at all, as they instead resembled numerous blooming golden lotuses. Miraculous fire golden lotuses. Yen Zhaoga raised his brows slightly, continuing forward without halting. Just having approached, the golden lotuses that had originally seemed calm mightily exploded, transforming into boundless golden flames that sought to devour Yen Zhaoga. Yen Zhaoga punched out from afar. The extreme Yang seal above his head no longer exerting its protective effect, as it instead clashed head-on with force against force, meeting those golden flames head-on. The golden flames exploded, unable to harm the extreme Yang seal as they were mostly broken through by it. Still, some remnant flames had yet to be extinguished as they still assaulted Yen Zhaoga. Now, Yen Zhaoga's evil sword Tao Tai turned to deal with it. the black sword-light devouring all things as it devoured those golden flames that participated in it. He advanced, breaking through the numerous fire lotuses. Midway through, his heart suddenly jolted. Turning and gazing backwards, Yen Zhaoge indeed saw golden sunlight flickering behind him. A three-legged golden crow entered his field of vision.